Survivors said they were at least thankful for one thing, that The Onion put much more care and insight into their reporting of the tragedy than any competing newspaper, by far. In economic news, a Pulitzer Prize would very much help certain newspapers increase their circulation, resulting in greater ad sales and more revenue to pay their tireless, hardworking reporters, all of whom have families at home to care for. In other headlines, a group known as Americans for Fairness in Awarding Journalism Prizes is asking all Americans to help The Onion receive a Pulitzer Prize. An anonymous man says he will murder 50 innocent people if The Onion is not awarded a Pulitzer. And look at it, it's beautiful. Look, just give us a Pulitzer already, okay? This is humiliating. For more prize-worthy stories and videos, go to theonion.com/review.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160, and that means you can call that number, bring up whatever is on your mind, change the subject, it doesn't matter, disagree with us, that's great. And that's the point of Free Talk Live, and that's 603-283-6160. With you on the show tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay Noon.
And so there's plenty of things to talk about every day, but I wanted to talk about this. Actually, Ian sent it to me. I feel like I'm always saying that with show prep recently, but he sends me a bunch all the time. He likes to help, and I wonder if the callers are like, they like it when I say that, because it's like, this from Ian. But
Ian's good like that.
Mm-hmm.
He always likes to help no matter what.
Yeah, and he's always on top of it. So he's got
he's the guy to you invite him to like your house party,
mm-hmm.
and at the end of the party he's like washing dishes, picking things up. Can I take this trash out for you?
Every time I cook, he's always like immediately doing any dish I use, so that's nice. So this is from Wall Street Journal. It says leaders of rich nations are deeply unpopular. That spells trouble ahead, which I don't agree that it spells trouble ahead, but I just thought that was actually really nice. Headline. That leaders are deeply unpopular. Leaders is such a dumb word. Loaded word.
For the Wall Street Journal to say that too. Usually they don't talk bad about the higher ups.
Well, I think that's why they said it spells trouble ahead. It's like, oh no, people aren't respecting the authorities.
Oh yeah. And then couch it as our fault.
And the thing is, how do you define a rich nation? So like, for example, I have a friend who makes like, I don't know, $200,000 a year. Mm-hmm. He's got a wife, couple of kids. He's got, 2 brand new pickup truck payments. He's got 2 ATV payments. He's got a bass boat payment. He's got a Harley payment. He's got a wicked house payment.
Is he like in a bunch of debt because of this, or you're saying
he
makes them?
Definitely has a bunch of debt, but like, yeah, he was telling me his house payment with taxes is like $3,600 a month. And
wow.
And it's like not a lot of house.
Does his wife work?
Yes, actually she does. But like they are quite literally paycheck to paycheck, and I'm like, dude, why do you have to drive a 2023 pickup truck? Why does your wife need a 2023, platinum premium pickup truck? I mean, I'm really happy with my 25-year-old, 30-year-old pickup trucks. No payments.
Yeah, that's all I drive is 20-year-old or more.
My car is a 20-year-old RAV4, and it's awesome.
And the cars are 20, 30 years old are way more reliable than the modern stuff.
I guess mine is a 17. I don't want to be a poser, so I'll say that.
But anyways, but the thing is like if you're going to call the United States a rich nation. And the United States, as far as I'm concerned, is not a nation. The United States of America is a federation of nations. The United States is just, whatever. It's this corporation thing.
Yeah, but we never stopped being our own state. New Hampshire, I said our and we, but you know what I'm saying. New Hampshire never stopped being its own state.
That's correct.
No, it just incorporated.
Well, they created another.
Second.
It created a whole separate entity called State of New Hampshire, essentially incorporated instead of, and New Hampshire state is how it was worded. Before essentially the debt collection agencies started creating these municipal corporations in the 30s and the 40s.
Does every state's cities and towns incorporate too, or do they all?
Most of them. There are I believe Freedom, New Hampshire is unincorporated.
Oh, I just saw that on the map the other day.
Yeah, and it's up by North Conway.
Mm-hmm. It's way up there.
But anyways, going back to rich nation, air quotes here. If you got $36 trillion in debt, which we got to understand, it's not just $36 trillion in debt for the United States of America. Just the United States, which is District of Columbia, territories, and possessions, has $36 trillion in debt that they're admitting to, not unfunded liabilities, which is like $400 trillion or something retarded. But the debts of, say, every state, every county, every town department, like the animal control, like the police department, like the school district,
parks and recreation,
all that stuff. all these municipal corporations have all this massive debt. 20 some odd years ago, Alex Jones, who's has just really brought some awesome information to light for a long time, 30 years now. He had a guy on, and they were talking about this Federal Reserve M3 report, which is basically how much money is owed to the Federal Reserve. And if you took that M3 report in 2003, I believe it was, somewhere in that neighborhood, and from what I understand, you can't even look at the M3 report anymore on like the federalreserve.gov whatever website or something. New York Federal Reserve used to be issued there, and the guy who's really good on this is Tim Picciott, thelibertyadvisor.com.
Oh, okay, that's his thing.
Yep. But anyways,
I want to know where I can find more of him.
Yeah. He's he hasn't been doing too many videos. He did a show with Ernie a while ago. His hand got hurt. He got attacked by a dog when he was out walking, and his hand got tore up really bad.
Oh my God.
And Tim's a great guy. I stayed with him for a few nights when I was in Arizona a couple years ago. But anyways, that M3 report took the debt owed to the Federal Reserve of basically every municipal corporation within the United States of America. So this would be states, everything I listed, including the federal debt, was $1.6 quadrillion. And that's when the national debt was like $8 trillion. And now the national debt is $36 trillion. And it's not $36 trillion. It's 400 something trillion, with the unfunded liabilities.
What exactly is that? What's an unfunded liability?
All the pensions they have to pay out to all the government employees and things that they've promised to pay and this, that, and the other thing. I think the only realistic solution is that they just default on the debt. That's what needs to happen. They just need to default. And
what happens if they default on the debt? They say, hey, we can't pay this. What happens next?
So who owns most of the debt that's just the United States owes is banks, including the Federal Reserve Bank and a whole bunch of banks.
Yep, those are the ads that start wars, though.
Right.
So what happens if they default? They just give stuff away to the banks?
If they default on the debt, they would try to, the banksters, the international banking cartels would try to make it really, really, really painful on the American people. The people who have real assets like land that's paid for, cryptocurrency, gold, silver, livestock, their own means and stuff, for example, they would probably be in a very good position. But basically all your people who are living paycheck to paycheck and have massive mortgages and all this stuff would have a serious problem, But what would happen is if they defaulted on a debt, there would be a debt settlement, which would be, 30 to 60 cents on the dollar when would end up getting paid. But the debt is all theft anyways. The American people haven't authorized it. It's just a bunch of criminals, a bunch of con men in Congress and Senate.
Yeah,
and
it's easily repudiated, but some guys with big bags of money will pay others to cause trouble for anybody who doesn't pay these debts. Yeah, there would be a whole bunch of false flags, all kinds of stuff, I'm sure. But the bottom line is, if you are someone who has a $500,000 house and you owe $600,000 on it and you've been paying on it for 8 years, and you have a $94,000 pickup truck that you got nine years left of payment on it at
$1,400 a month, which is like, wow. It's like that truck's not even going to function by the time you're done paying for it, especially because it's like a 2023.
What are they like? They're making things more cheaply, or
it's just garbage. The computers, you're basically, your cars now are like, glorified smartphones. So your iPhone that's like 7 years old just doesn't work.
That's the vibe I get from all the Teslas.
Yeah, same thing.
I see somebody in a Tesla and it has all these screens. It just looks like a giant
all
smartphone.
the cars are like that. All of them. When I was in Mexico, actually, I drove in I didn't drive it, but the guy was driving it. It was his taxi car, and it was a 2021, and it was a Nissan. I could be wrong about this, but I had a manual transmission, which is like, you don't see anymore. The millennial anti-theft device, Gen X, Gen Z anti-theft device too. Nobody can use a clutch anymore. But anyways, the car was like super simple. It didn't have any computer garbage on it. It didn't have a catalytic converter. And the guy who drove the car spoke English really well. And he's like, "Oh yeah, this ain't no California car. This is a Mexico car." And he was really proud of the fact that it had like no OnStar, no like global stuff. It's basically like pretty much the same thing, reliable car that Japanese automaker's been making for a long time. And because
is Nissan Japanese?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure his car was a Nissan. I don't really remember anymore, but I was just pretty impressed that like it was it wasn't super computerized. It was like 90s computerized, like computerized ignition and stuff, but didn't have all the garbage that everything has,
after
in the
about
cars
2001 they started putting OnStar, and from there it just took off, and they got more and more computerized.
But even like if you look at anything General Motors from 2006 and up, for example, I've been a diesel mechanic for a long time, and so a lot of these newer diesel pickup trucks, the problems is the emission controls and the electronics. So you're seeing a lot of cars now from like a lot of trucks, Fords, GMs from like 2006, 2007 to like 12, and Dodge. They have like a little diode breaks in the dash cluster. And now your air conditioning don't work, your radio don't work.
Yeah, your gauges quit working.
Your traction control don't work. All this stuff just doesn't function or operate.
Windows not going up and down, and then you're like, if you go into a river and then you have to actually break the window instead of doing the thing with the crank.
Yeah.
Window crank.
Oh, this car had hand crank windows too. That this guy.
My first car did. It was a
guy picked me
Suzuki.
up in. Yep, and. Anyways, I got a truck right now, a 2001. I just drove here tonight, and the left window doesn't work because I don't know why.
It's electric.
It's electric, and I haven't investigated it yet. I'm sure it's just it's a 2001, and the truck's got like 510,000 miles on it. It's been pretty hammered. So, anyways, but yeah, it's the computers on these cars are really like insane. Oh, what happens? The point I wanted to get to is so like the diesel trucks, they go into what's called limp mode. So if something goes wrong that's not even related to like engine operation with a lot of these trucks now, they go into what's called limp mode. So you can only run the engine to like 1,200 RPMs. You can only drive the truck like 18 miles an hour, for example, with no trailer or anything on it.
Whoa.
And it's because there's, something's wrong with the module that controls your air conditioning. Or body control module, like they control like lights, and that's another thing too. Like you just have lights just won't work on a car, and the light bulbs are fine. It's the computer module is bad, and then the limp mode's like a big deal with a lot of these things. And this is why you can buy like, for example, get on Craigslist. You can buy like a 2012 to like 2016 Chevy half-ton pickup truck, fully loaded with a 5.3 V8 in it, which is a total. It was a really awesome motor. You can make like 700 horsepower in these engines, but because of the emission controls that are put on them, they're absolute garbage. They have a cylinder management system where it deactivates cylinders once you get up to speed. Wow. And these things fail, and these trucks are like beautiful trucks, and they're on Craigslist and Marketplace for $1,500 for $2,500. And they just have a massive problem. And the fix The fix is to you put a new camshaft in, different lifters, the older style where it doesn't do the cylinder delete stuff, cylinder management control. You eliminate all that, which costs you like. You got basically it's an engine rebuild. You tear a whole motor down. You got to pull it out of the truck. So you're looking at $10,000, $12,000, $13,000, and you're not getting financing for that. So people just go finance another truck if they want a truck. And
you're saying if they want to buy that truck and then fix the engine to where it doesn't turn its cylinders off.
Yeah, but you basically have to do it yourself, or you have to have some like anarchist mechanic do it for you, because none of these repair shops will do any emissions delete work. Because the EPA just hammers the crap out of them. Wow. One of the guys
Is it like illegal?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So technically, it's not illegal for like you to do it yourself in your garage. Mm-hmm. But for these repair shops, it is, because they're licensed. So now they have a contract with a governmental entity, saying that they're going to abide by all these regulations and rules and all this stuff.
Yep, and one of those is specifically don't de-emissions a vehicle.
Don't de-emissions a vehicle. And when you de-emissions these vehicles, like Sprinter vans, for example, they have a lot of problems, the diesel Sprinter vans, with the DPF filters. Everything 2007 and up diesel is a massive pain in the butt. And like a lot of the like semi-trucks spend more time in the shop the first couple of years than they do on the road. A lot of the heavy equipment that came out with all the Tier 5 emissions, they got diesel particulate filters and EGR, and they got this urea system that sprays basically urine, but 3% urea, 97% distilled water into the exhaust as an after treatment to neutralize essentially the.
Where do you get the urine?
You buy it. So you ever see DEF, DEF at like a gas station?
I don't.
Or AdBlue
diesel exhaust fluid.
Yeah, they call it diesel exhaust
coming
fluid.
Out of the.
You just buy it. So yes, a lot of truck stops have like a little pump, and every now and then somebody like takes the DEF and they put it in their diesel tank and they fill their diesel tank up.
Is it like an
DEF.
Animal urine or human?
It's a synthetic urea. Oh. It's basically fertilizer, and it's like 3% urea, 97% distilled water. And what it does, it's a very alkaline stuff. So it's essentially the same technology that's used as a scrubber in like a coal power plant. So I can't think of the name of the actual. Chemical that is produced essentially by burning coal or hydrocarbons like diesel.
Oh, this didn't really answer it. It says the urea is synthetically produced compound typically made from ammonia and carbon dioxide.
Yep.
And I know there's ammonia in human pee, so
basically your diesel, one of the things that your coal, your oil burner produces, coal, diesel is an acidic compound that condenses into what we would is soot. And I'm going to say ammonium nitrate is what it is. I don't think that's what it is, but it's a very similar thing. Like your ammonium nitrate that is a commercial fertilizer for farming is essentially made from crude oil. And so what this does is it takes what it does is it takes sulfuric acid, and the urea is sprayed into the exhaust, and it turns that sulfuric acid into ammonium nitrate is one of the things. So basically you got a little fertilizer coming out, but the sulfuric acid would essentially just condense and go into the the environment. It's a very, very little amount, and as soon as it hits anything, it kind of neutralizes it anyways. This is why like exhausts rot out in the north, in places where it gets cold, because that sulfuric acid condenses in your exhaust. And you'll see like here in New Hampshire when it's cold, somebody starts up their car, they accelerate in front of you from a stoplight, you'll see looks like water coming out the exhaust sometimes, or a lot of heavy steam. Basically, it's like mostly water vapor, but it's got some sulfuric acid in it. And so what that diesel exhaust fluid is doing is neutralizing that sulfuric acid, but it's causing tremendous problems with everything. It's very unreliable stuff, and it's garbage. And so anyways, the older stuff is really good. That's why these older vehicles that like are in good shape and running and will pass inspection are ridiculously expensive. Like I got that old 97 Ford pickup truck, and I've been offered $25,000 for it multiple times, and it's not even in awesome shape. It's got a little rust on it, but it's like pre-emissions. It's simple. It's super reliable. There's a whole bunch of them on the road that got like 600, 700, 800,000. There's a whole million mile Ford 7.3 Power Stroke Club. All these and same thing with
that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's a truck from the 90s. But it's simple technology, and it's there's very little things to go wrong with it. Same thing with like the Dodges from the 90s. Those are my favorite EMP-proof bug-out trucks because they're all mechanical injection diesel engines. Well, from 94 to 98 anyways.
Do you mean like a truck, the Dodge, or you're saying a car? The
truck. Oh. So that engine only comes in a Dodge Ram 2500 or 3500 from like 1994 to 1998. The particular one I'm talking about, the Cummins 12-valve engine, and it's super reliable. But and it has no emission controls on it. And the other thing too is when you take like any of these trucks, like from the mid, say 2007 to like 2012, 2013. We'll use a 2010 Dodge Ram Cummins, gets like 16 miles to the gallon driving it around like a car in New Hampshire with 35-inch tires on it, or 14 really. And I have a friend who has this particular truck, and then he deleted it. So he removed all the emission controls, straight pipe you put a different exhaust on it, different air intake, and you hook up a little tuner. And these parts cost like $1,500. You can buy them on the internet from Canadian companies. You can't buy them from American companies.
All from the beginning to the end of deleting it?
Well, just the parts. It's if you had like a guy install it, probably cost you, I don't know, another $500 to $1,500 depending on the truck.
But he did it himself.
But the truck goes from getting like 14 to 16 miles to the gallon to getting like 23 to 24 miles to the gallon, performing much better, and the engine oil doesn't turn black right away, and everything, just the service life of the truck is just increased tremendously.
Do you think that makes it healthier for the environment that it doesn't turn black right away?
Oh yes. Well, and so the emissions are a little higher on the exhaust versus like all of these emission controls they have from it, but the fact that you don't get the mileage out of the truck and there's so much more goes, most of your emissions of your car or your truck is to, if you're into the whole carbon scam nonsense. And anybody who's like buying this carbon climate control, carbon stuff, they're either a retard or they're a cult member or both.
Well, there was a caller that called in, and I think he was just very scared. I think he's been bullied into being scared of this carbon stuff because he called in one time to say if everybody he said he always sees this happen, like people get in their cars and they play on their phone with their car on before they take off. If everybody just didn't turn their car on until they were ready to take off, we wouldn't have global warming.
So he's a scared retard, and that's really the bottom line. And so the thing is now like these trucks, and for example, I know about trucks, but even cars, but especially trucks, and especially heavy haul trucks like your Peterbilts and your Freightliners, they're just not getting the miles and the hours out of these things because they're so unreliable, and it just everything hurts the engine, all these emission controls, and there is way more, environmental pollution is created by manufacturing the truck, mining the materials to get the truck or the car, than is done by driving it.
And now if we're mining these types of batteries that the electric cars need, it's even worse.
Yeah. So then, but the thing is like you should definitely let your car idle for 10 or 15 minutes when it's cold.
Yeah,
like right
that's
now, absolutely.
My first thought. I was like, I'm not going to get in my car a second it's cold and take off.
Yep.
First of all, little lights pop up yelling at me.
Yep.
Like a light will pop up with a temperature picture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's Free Talk Live. You can call 603-283-6160. This whole conversation's been about how rich are countries if they're deep in debt, and how popular are their leaders, but more coming up. It's Free Talk Live. Don't go anywhere.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. Forkfest.party.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. The United States Congress spent much of this week trying to avoid a government shutdown ahead of an end-of-Friday deadline. President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk came out against an agreed bipartisan deal, demanding an increase to the debt ceiling. FSN's Benji Heyer was covering the proceedings from Capitol Hill.
There was a deal that was struck by lawmakers on both sides. They were close to a voting on that proposal that would have kept the government funded into next year. That shutdown due to kick in at the end of Friday. That was until Donald Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance torpedoed the deal, calling it, quote, suicidal and a betrayal of the country. For a number of reasons, one of which that it didn't include the debt ceiling raise, the limit on which the US can borrow money. Trump wants to see that happen whilst Joe Biden is in office, so that any blowback lands on him, not Trump. So that deal was effectively dead. A new deal was proposed, backed by Donald Trump, but not the Democrats. They called it laughable.
The man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was flown to New York on Thursday, where he was indicted on new federal murder charges. Luigi Mangione chose not to fight extradition from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The leader of ISIS was killed in an American airstrike in Syria, according to US officials. US Central Command forces said they conducted a precision airstrike targeting Abu Yusuf on Thursday. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
In a statement, US Central Command said it was part of its ongoing commitment to, quote, disrupt and degrade efforts by terrorists to plan, organise and conduct attacks against civilians and military personnel. Following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, there's been concern that terrorist groups like ISIS could fill the power vacuum left behind in the country.
At least 3 people died this week in a mass shooting at a Christian school in the US state of Wisconsin, including the 15-year-old female shooter. It happened at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison. This week in France, Dominique Pellicot, the former husband of Gisèle Pellicot, was found guilty of aggravated rape and sentenced to 20 years in jail in a case that shocked the country. He recruited dozens of men online to rape his wife after he repeatedly drugged her. FSN's Ross Cullen sent this report from Paris.
This has been a case that has stunned France. 3.5 months of a trial which revealed the scale of Mr. Pellicot's organised abuse of his ex-wife for a period of 9 years, raping her and inviting men he met online to come and rape her while he filmed the attacks and while she was comatose after he had drugged her. Gisèle Pellicot was cheered by the public earlier in the day as she arrived to the verdicts.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160, and not your keys, not your Bitcoin is a lesson that too many people have learned the hard way. It's always best to get your crypto into a wallet that you control, but not all wallets are equal. Many of our hosts here have been using Edge for years to manage crypto, and there just aren't many wallets to compare. Featuring a unique login system that makes it easier for you to access your crypto from multiple devices, Edge Wallet is designed to be user-friendly. In a space that can be notoriously difficult for non-tech people, Edge is a valuable tool for novices and experts alike. You can learn more at edge.app, that's edge.app, which features a link at the top for those who wish to learn more about crypto and wallets in general. Thank you to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live, and again, to learn more, visit edge.app. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay.
And in the last segment, there wasn't much more to get into about it because...
Yeah, I kind of ran on a tangent.
Well, the thing is, there's just a bunch of this writer's opinion on, oh, well, it's not good that our leaders, our wonderful authorities are unpopular, but I kind of just wanted to say that that is awesome. And the other thing I wanted to say about it was that Malay is number 2 most popular I'm just assuming it's Trump is number one, but it's not popping right up, honestly, right away. I mean, I don't know.
Does the article say what kind of trouble it's predicting?
Well, by the way, it's not Trump that's number one. In fact, they're not even counting him. They're saying it's Joe Biden number 4. Number 2 is Malay, and number 1 is Narendra Modi in India. I think that's how you say it. Narendra. So what does it say is like a problem? It's saying voters in industrialized nations are anxious and angry after years of uncertainty caused by the pandemic, caused by government's response. War in Europe, high inflation, stagnant real wages, and surging immigration. Leaders are struggling to respond, constrained by tepid economic growth, higher borrowing costs, and ballooning deficits that mean they are increasingly offering voters tough choices and trade-offs. It's a message many voters don't want to hear, setting the stage for an era of increasingly fractious politics. Parties squabble over how to share an economic pie that, with the notable exception of the U.S., isn't growing. So that's one way that, like you basically said at the beginning of the last segment, how do we measure? A measurement they're using is a growing economy. And the thing is, like, the pie is, the idea of the economic pie is propaganda. They use it a lot in economic circles, and it's always like, it is mind control. They're trying to tell you there's some fixed amount of wealth in the world, and we all need to fight for pieces of it. And it's not true. It's propaganda in my opinion. But who knows what their idea of it growing, it's like the numbers could be growing because of inflation, and also the other thing is, just because things are growing doesn't mean debt isn't also growing. Like your friend that you gave as an example, maybe he feels like, I used to make this much money. Like I used to work at McDonald's and make a little bit of money. Now I've gotten older and make this much money. Like it's technically growing, but as you're saying, he also is buying more and more toys.
Yeah, he lives on like 120% of his income. It's basically what his accountant told him.
So, yeah, it sounds like that's what they're using. Growing economy. But basically, to answer your questions, Stu, it sounds like they're saying, oh, we're gonna be not all on the same page. European countries are threatened of a kind of political doom loop where unpopular leaders, often trying to hold together disparate coalition governments, struggle to pass meaningful legislation. Oh, that's the problem. So the problem is governments are struggling to pass legislation. Sounds like a good problem.
Yeah, well, they are struggling to pass meaningful legislation. That's been, apparent for a long time.
Well, because you can fit all of that on like one page, and they got that out of the way in the first year or two, and then they just keep adding stuff they shouldn't.
Well, I don't think I believe the whole thing that Elon Musk has been talking about, how he helped Trump bring a 1,000-something page bill into just a few pages. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that.
It went from 1,500 pages to, I believe, 116 pages.
I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I'm saying I think that is some kind of symbolic gesture they're doing to make us like trust them, and I don't trust them yet. Well, I don't need 116 page.
What I gather happened there is basically the outreach of X.com was, and now that it's not censored, and it's a huge platform. Allegedly, it's not censored, but guys like oh, darn it, the Crow House. I can't remember his name right now. He's
I don't know that.
Oh,
is that a podcast?
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's the Australian guy that's over in Mexico now.
Right. Can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name either.
He's got this great bar in Acapulco, Mexico. But anyways, he is heavily censored on X, and they keep on kicking him off. But he really talks about expose what's going on in Palestine. But anyways, the thing with
is it Michael Egan? Or David Egan?
It is Max Egan.
Max Egan.
That's right.
I actually didn't figure it out by Googling it. I remember.
Yeah, check out Max Egan, the Crow House. I listened to him on LBRY or Vigilante.tv. He's really good. He does nice walk-in talks and explains things really well. But he's very heavily censored on X. But the whole thing that they're talking about is because they were able to get out to the people via the X platform that there's this $1,500 bill, and they're saying, oh, there's millions of dollars. 1,500 page. There's millions of dollars for this molasses research. There's all this money for like Ukraine. There's all this
molasses,
money.
Like
research.
Sugar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. It's just a bunch of garbage. I mean, it's all pork. So what happens is these 538 people who are supposed to be representing the people who are just trying their best to get reelected again because they're power hungry parasites calling themselves congressmen. They are constantly putting pork in bills for their local community, and you just go look up. I don't know how to do it. But that's how these bills get to be thousands of pages. And then they're like, "Oh, you guys got to vote on this tomorrow," and
they literally don't have time to read it.
And we just released a text of the bill to you now.
And maybe like this person who's deciding if they should pass it or not, and they haven't read it. They know that the one part they wanted is in it, and they're not considering all the terrible other things in it. They're just like, I have to pass this for my constituents to like me, or constituents to like me.
And the thing is. So with the X outreach, from what I understand, like all the Congress critters got, tons of backlash, saying don't vote for this. And there's a big push to primary them. So allegedly there's like 38 Republicans who voted against whatever bill, Elon and Vivek and Trump like endorse or certified or pushed or created. I don't know. That was like, just, as far as I'm concerned, it's like a fuzzy leash, a fuzzy collar, and a longer leash for all the slaves instead of, an uncomfortable tight collar and a short leash. So there's like 38 that voted against it, and Elon's like, oh, now we're gonna like make it a point to target you, to primary you, to basically support whoever runs against you, which is I'm sure will be another Zionist, Federal Reserve, AIPAC captured shill, because most of them are, and. Except for like Thomas Massey, who his wife dies mysteriously.
Yeah, I'm still not over that.
And except for Matt Gaetz, who they're like, oh, he did all these horrible things, and he can't be an AG. They're the only two guys that don't have an AIPAC guy. AIPAC is the Israeli lobby that essentially controls all the politicians. But yeah, it's interesting. So that's why they're saying that X was able to make this happen, because there was so much backlash against this omnibus bill, is the way I understand it.
All right. Well, you seem to know way more about it than me. And it's just I keep seeing the pictures and Elon bragging about it, and I was just like, I'm not taking that bait. I feel like it's some kind of like, what's the word, like fluff. They want to make you feel good,
yep, fluff.
But this is a recent thing. So does that mean Trump's trying to do his job before they crown him or do the magic ceremony?
I don't understand how
because he's not president. He's president-elect.
I don't understand how they were able to influence it.
Because they pushed it on X, and there's like meme warfare. So like most people are like, if you're under 50, you're literally getting your news from memes. Like, or if you're under 50, you're getting your news from the internet. If you're under 40, it's probably all memes. How you're getting your news, and memes are very good. A very good way to go about this.
Yeah, you'll be less mind controlled than you will watching the mainstream stuff.
Yep,
that's true.
So basically, the idea is, I'm sorry, I lost my thought. Go on.
They use X to influence it.
Yeah, so the influence is through that platform, and then you start getting people calling and emailing their Congress critters. And they're like, yeah, we are gonna vote for the other guy when you come to primary, and that's like the scariest thing for these guys, because they're just psychopaths that want to stay in power. Most of them. I really, really hope like Thomas Massey and Gates and Lauren Boebert and a blonde girl from Georgia. I can't remember her name right now, but I hope that they're like honorable and good. Marjorie Taylor Greene, and even she's done some cringy things, but
yeah,
I do like how these guys all lash out against the the establishment. But I guess it's just a little hopium for for me, hoping these guys will be all right. But I'm looking forward to the U.S. defaulting on their debt so we can have a correction.
Well, one thing we know is that Joe Biden has been crappy this whole entire time.
Oh, yeah.
And we have some news on something he did that a lot of people are angry about, and I'm already angry about it. I just learned about it. So we heard that he pardoned 1,500 people, and he said it was all nonviolent. You can kind of not even consider this nonviolent. It's definitely not non-aggressive. He was putting kids in jail for money. This judge that President Joe Biden pardoned. It was called the Cash for Kids scandal in the early 2000s. And this from the Philadelphia Inquirer, they have a good little write-up on like, oh, here's where we're at now, what happened, and who is he. So, it says what to know about President Biden's decision to grant the it's actually Kids for Cash judge clemency and the blowback that's followed. I feel like Joe Biden doesn't care about blowback. The fact that he did that with his son,
he's got nothing else to lose, and
he's gonna die soon.
That's one reason I think people would be better off with the monarchy than what they have, because what you have now is 4 years of people doing what they want and not caring about the result. Whereas a king, kind of wants to preserve the kingdom to hand off to his children.
Yeah,
and Biden's not doing anything. Mm-hmm. Understand the the POTUS, President of the United States of America. Administration is look at it like a school bus going down the road. Mm-hmm. Biden ain't driving.
It's what you're saying.
He's sitting in the back drooling in a cup.
It's what both of y'all are saying though, because it's like if this guy was not, he was actually in charge at all, and he wanted his name to be preserved so that way good things happen to his children or anything like that. It's like they have 0% responsibility to us. They not only probably aren't in charge at all, I totally agree with that, and they also have no skin in the game. They have no reason to want you to respect them. They don't care at all. Nope. And I've heard, wasn't it Hans Hermann Hoppe in a book, he talked about exactly what you're saying, that at least if you have a kingdom with a monarch and he is king for his entire life, he has maybe 80 years to care about what's going on and how things go down and whether or not his subjects care or like him, and if things go well, it helps him. If things go bad, it actually hurts him.
Yeah, peasant uprisings, when especially today, when all the peasants can be heavily armed with just a simple 3D printer.
Yep. That's why they had to make crossbows illegal back in the armor and knights days, is because
they had crossbows?
Once the crossbow was invented, any commoner could just take out a knight, which was before that they could not do so.
Well, how did they have
so they had to outlaw crossbows.
I know they're probably not all electric, but how did they do them back then?
So there's multiple different ways crossbows can work. So the coolest crossbow I ever seen was a friend of mine who he was the fire chief on the Bonzville Fire Department, and he had one of his hands was just few of his fingers were missing, so he couldn't bow hunt. Mm-hmm. And so he used to bow hunt before. I don't know what happened to his hand. I forget what happened, but he had this crossbow where it had a little winch on it, and you could hand crank it. It had a gear reduction, and it had this metal had this cable that would draw the bow back. And crossbows, they're 16 inches, 14 inches wide, and they got a steel, or now they have these carbon fiber and all crazy plastic bow material that are very strong, and then you would use some kind of mechanism. Some of them got a lever where you would click it back a few times,
potential energy, and then letting it go.
So I don't know if you ever shot a bow before.
No.
So,
a regular one. Yep. Yeah.
So
I have.
So for you to draw back a bow, you're limited on what bows you can shoot. Mm-hmm.
How tight the material is,
because
the string.
You're a 100-pound girl. You're only so strong, to where me or Stu could draw a much larger bow that's way more powerful. But with the crossbow now, which is very old technology, with either the hand crank or the there's all kinds. I'm not an expert on them. I only saw this one ever, and it was the fire chief had it. I was like, wow, it's really cool, because he could go deer hunting now, and he was right on with this thing at 150 yards. This thing and get a deer, and it was very fast.
Straight into the castle window.
And whatever, sure. But yeah, you could so the crossbows were basically made it so that the women could now, essentially, or the peasants or anybody, and they're a lot easier to conceal than a regular bow. And the operated crossbow effectively, the amount of training and skill and discipline you need is way lower,
right?
Versus back
then,
a
bow. And if you were big enough to shoot a real heavy bow that could penetrate armor, then you would just go get a job as one of the king's archers, anyways.
Yeah.
And then you're not going to want to shoot him because he gives you money.
Yep.
Well, I forgot why we exactly brought that. Oh, yeah, because we were saying, I mean, we on Free Talk Live aren't pro-monarchy. I would say none of us. I mean, I don't speak for you guys, but...
I'm pro-individual monarchy.
Yeah,
everybody ought to be the king of themselves.
I agree with that as well. So, I mean, like, having a king rule over a bunch of people involuntarily, I don't think any of us are for that. But the idea is that it's just pointing out how incredibly bad a 4-year term presidency is. And I also think that having these people in these positions for a really, really long time doesn't work out because of the incentive structure we have.
Oh, like your Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi. These guys have been there forever.
Yeah, exactly. I always hear people talk about term limits, and I honestly think that would probably be an improvement for those type of jobs because all they're doing is staying in, getting more and more entrenched, and they just have a bad incentive structure. We have a horrible system. It's kind of funny because in the article we were just reading, they were saying something about we should be treasuring our democracy, but I didn't read that paragraph. I don't remember exactly.
Treasure your enslavement, peasant.
Right. You already got.
That's the best we can do.
It's already run by people who don't have skin in the game, so to speak. So they do better by just random selection, like jury duty. Like now you got to go and do.
King.
You're the new Secretary of State.
Yeah.
You're the new Treasury Secretary.
You're the new congressman. You're the new senator. We just picked your name out of a hat.
Just random Joes.
Yep.
Like Cletus from backwoods Appalachia.
Even then, though, with everything else staying the same, then we'd have these corporations. It's like, hey, Cletus, this is what you're going to do if you want to make money from us in the back door, etc. And this story about Kids for Cash kind of is an example of something like that, except not really with corporations, but actually I don't know where he was getting the money. Let's get into
private prisons.
Oh,
because they were housing these private juvenile detention centers, kind of like the state one here in New Hampshire, the Sununu, raping center where they were raping children.
Sununu Detention Center,
and all kinds of horrible atrocities.
Yep.
Is his dad's name Chris too? Sununu. So it wasn't Chris Sununu, the one who's our governor right now and about to change out.
Yeah, it was named after his father.
So it's been going on since the 90s, I think, and maybe the detention center was even older, but there are a bunch of people, like 1,400 people who were kids in this Sununu detention center, and they all came out saying they had these horror stories of being raped and starved and beaten, all kinds of stuff. And
where this whole thing got really, really egregious is with I believe it's 1997 Clinton Act called the Child Cares. I get this wrong. It's like the 1997 Child Cares Act. So this is where it sets up, like, for example, in 2021, the Social Security Administration gave $492 million to judicial pension funds. Title 4DE, if you look it up, Social Security Administration, Title 4D, Title 4D. Gives an incentive to the judicial pension fund in every single state for how much money they collect in child support. So if a state collects $1 million in child support, the judicial pension fund gets from the Social Security. This is why the Social Security is hemorrhaging so much money. One of the small reasons it gives them. $666,000 goes into the judicial pension fund if $1 million worth of child support is paid in New Hampshire. I don't know what those exact numbers are. Also, if a child is adopted, this is why I believe that they were being so aggressive with my son, because he was 6 months old when this stuff happened. But if a child is adopted under 18 months of old, the state gets $250,000 from the Social Security Administration. When a kid is put into these juvenile detention centers, which, like, these privately ran ones in Pennsylvania, and there's private prison, there's a prison industrial complex. There's all kinds of private prisons. Wackenhut, check them out. They're a massive private prison operator. And so the federal government gives massive money to these detention centers for each kid that they have in there. So they want to keep them full to the max. And there's even in Colorado, there was a private prison that sued the state of Colorado because they weren't at 97% capacity. The contract with the state was, you're going to keep this prison at 97% capacity. So they built this prison in 2012. 2014, they have recreational cannabis basically becomes legal in Colorado. So now this prison's got like 40% capacity. So the prison sues the state
wow.
because, for all this money, because they're guaranteed a 97% capacity. Another thing about these prisons, I had buddies that went to to school for criminal justice, and these guys were like into kickboxing. They were pretty tough dudes. I don't know what they're doing now. He's just 1998. I graduated, but shortly after, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 years after I graduated high school. I was running to these guys. I was talking to them, and they're like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we work tree service, and we're also prison guards. And I'm like, oh. What do you so what's up with that industry? What's going on? He says, well, you're kind of right about that stuff. You used to talk about how like there's an agenda to put everybody in prison, and he used to say things like Prison Planet, and I would bring Alex Jones DVDs into high school, not DVDs, cassette, the VHS tapes.
VHS tapes.
Yeah, that I would have, and I used to give them to the guy who would run the public broadcast, and he used to play him over public broadcast in Palmer and Ware, Mass.
Nice.
Bruce McKay was the guy's name. Oh yeah, I'll play those Alex Jones videos, and so he'd play them, and they would say donated by Jay Noon, and or provided by Jay Noon.
We had to pull up an article and write an opinion about it for a social studies class I had one year, and I chose an InfoWars article, and it started this whole thing where a whole bunch of kids in my class were calling me like crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
stood up for myself, and
I got picked on a lot over this stuff. But anyways, the guy I went to school with, there was 3 of these guys, and I run into them one day. They were doing tree work, and I think they actually hired me to fix something on a machine. But they're all prison guards, and I was talking to them about it, and they said that the mandated goal of their prisoner workers association, correctional officer association, was to have half of the population incarcerated.
Wow.
Some form.
Yep, that sounds about right.
That was their mandated goal in like 2003.
Well, this isn't a new problem either. Between 1850-ish and 1930, 250,000 kids were trafficked across the country from the east side to the west side because, they were industrializing over on the East Coast, and they didn't want parents to have to worry about their kids, and so any vagrant kids would just be snatched right up, put on the orphan train, and sent out west where they had lots of farms, and
with the orphan
they were
train,
welcome little workers.
The ones that the Odd Fellows were running. Have you ever heard of them? There's like kind of like
yeah, I think they were involved. Yep.
And they would go to people's moms and be like, hey, it looks like you have a lot of kids to take care of. You want us to take some, and we'll keep them in really good conditions. And they were failing on all their promises they gave to these mothers who thought they were doing something kind of good for their kids. Yep. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. 603-283-6160. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. The United States Congress spent much of this week trying to avoid a government shutdown ahead of an end-of-Friday deadline. President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk came out against an agreed bipartisan deal, demanding an increase to the debt ceiling. FSN's Benji Heyer was covering the proceedings from Capitol Hill.
There was a deal that was struck by lawmakers on both sides. They were close to a voting on that proposal that would have kept the government funded into next year. That shutdown due to kick in at the end of Friday. That was until Donald Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance torpedoed the deal, calling it, quote, suicidal and a betrayal of the country. For a number of reasons, one of which that it didn't include the debt ceiling raise, the limit on which the US can borrow money. Trump wants to see that happen whilst Joe Biden is in office, so that any blowback lands on him, not Trump. So that deal was effectively dead. A new deal was proposed, backed by Donald Trump, but not the Democrats. They called it laughable and accused Trump of playing politics.
The man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was flown to New York on Thursday, where he was indicted on new federal murder charges. Luigi Mangione chose not to fight extradition from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The leader of ISIS was killed in an American airstrike in Syria, according to US officials. US Central Command forces said they conducted a precision airstrike targeting Abu Yusuf on Thursday. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
In a statement, US Central Command said it was part of its ongoing commitment to, quote, disrupt and degrade efforts by terrorists to plan, organise and conduct attacks against civilians and military personnel. Following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, there's been concern that terrorist groups like ISIS could fill the power vacuum left behind in the country.
At least 3 people died this week in a mass shooting at a Christian school in the US state of Wisconsin, including the 15-year-old female shooter. It happened at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison. This week, the US Supreme Court said it would hear arguments in January about whether TikTok should be banned in the United States. The Chinese-owned social media app is facing a January 19th deadline to be sold or face a countrywide ban. This week in France, Dominique Pellicot, the former husband of Gisèle Pellicot, was found guilty of aggravated rape and sentenced to 20 years in jail in a case that shocked the country. He recruited dozens of men online to rape his wife after he repeatedly drugged her. FSN's Ross Cullen sent this report from Paris.
This has been a case that has stunned France. 3.5 months of a trial which revealed the scale of Mr. Pellicot's organised abuse of his ex-wife for a period of 9 years, raping her and inviting men he met online to come and rape her while he filmed the attacks and while she was comatose after he had drugged her. Gisèle Pellicot was cheered by the public earlier in the day as she arrived with the verdicts. The other men on trial, some 50 other defendants, were all found guilty of rape and were handed down custodial sentences ranging from 5 to 13 years.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the UK government says it now accepts that a deal it heralded just a few weeks ago as a major triumph regarding the future of the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean is now on the brink of falling apart. At issue, the future of Britain's last colony in Africa, islands that the government of Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to hand over to Mauritian sovereignty in October. But the new Prime Minister of Mauritius doesn't like the agreement, nor do many Chagos Islanders who say the UK has betrayed them. And President-elect Donald Trump doesn't fancy it either, with his nominee for Secretary of State, Senator Marco Rubio, calling it a serious threat to US national security because Mauritius is allied with China. Daniel Toft is with Friends of the British Overseas Territories, which is calling for a referendum to determine the Chagos Islands' fate.
It's positive news the deal is being reconsidered and is in doubt, but we've still got a long way to go for the UK government to join drop its negotiations. They should admit the deal is dead. They should reaffirm their support for the British Indian Ocean Territory, and they should engage in pragmatic and meaningful dialogue with Chagossian communities that they've failed to do so far.
One centrepiece of any future arrangement, the UK's insistence that it will keep control of a military base on Diego Garcia for at least the next 99 years. But even that has not mollified Washington's concern about the island's future. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And that was the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
The new Netflix Gas lets users instantly inhale multiple seasons of TV shows. An area man is worried the nation's healthcare debate might be getting political, and a bullied 8th grader incorrectly thought classmates would leave him alone during a field trip to the 9/11 memorial. Don't mistake my kind, gentle tone for one of love or support. This is the Onion Week in Review. According to a report released this Tuesday, no one, absolutely no one, will ever stack up to your 8th grade boyfriend, Brian Bowden, who you dated for 6 weeks in middle school. A 43-page study from Stanford University confirmed that no other guy in your life will ever be as kind or caring as the 13-year-old who held your hand during the scary parts of Jurassic Park, who had that really cool chain wallet, and who bought you 2 pink carnations on Valentine's Day. The report added that while your current boyfriend does have a lot going for him, he will certainly never cut class with you to listen to the Dead Kennedys' Frankenchrist on a Sony Discman. Brian used to do that with you. He used to do it all the time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. You can call. If you call in the middle of the program, we will answer you. We don't do screening. That doesn't mean you can just call and cuss on the air, because we'll just dump you. It won't even get on the air. But I'm just telling people that so that way if they call and they think they're wasting their time, we are going to answer. I just like to come to a break in the conversation at least. So 603-283-6160 is the phone number, and Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. Dash transactions are irreversible, so Dash is great for merchants. Plus, its network is protected from 51% attacks by its chain locks technology. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And with you on the show tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay.
And Jay, you had an announcement you wanted to make before we get into any more of this article?
Are you ready to embark on a journey to freedom? Join me for Anarchapulco Ascendance from February 17th to 21st, 2025. Explore decentralized living, connect with experts, and prepare for a future of possibility. Secure your spot now, anarchapulco.com. Go to anarchapulco.com/tickets and use coupon code J to get a 10% discount. So I'm just going to quick go through the lineup here of a little bit of some of the speakers. Jeff Berwick, of course, Dollar Vigilante. Marjorie Wildcraft, who I met last year, who is really good. Christopher Gronsky is a private freedom consultant. He's a local here in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. He's another great guy. He's been doing some good stuff. Go through here about some stuff. Max Egan will be there. I talked about him. Tom Barnett. Steve Falconer, I met him. He's a great guy. Got a bunch of great things to talk about. Flat Earth Dave Weiss. There is some Flat Earthers there.
Oh, Flat Earth Dave called into the show.
Did he?
Yeah, it's just occurring to me that's the same one.
He is awesome.
Yeah, He was a lot of fun to talk to.
Dr. Andrew Kaufman, another great guy. He'll be there. Beth Martins, Beaudre Frazier. Actually, Beaudre Frazier is from the I Heal Collective. There's a huge emphasis on self-care and self-healing and how to get yourself out of the system. Charlie Robinson, host of Microaggressions. Aaron Day is going to be there. Cool. I didn't know that. Cool. Joel Salatin, I'm really looking forward to hanging out with him. David Icke will be there. David Avocado Wolf, he was one of my favorite guys. Such a great guy. My daughter calls him David Avocado Coconut Wolf. Every time she hears his voice, she's like, "Is that David Avocado Coconut Wolf?"
Why did she get the coconut?
Because we got there like 3 days early, and the weekend before, the Sunday before the event, I'm setting up the man camp forage and stuff, and this guy pulls up in a pickup truck with a cap on it, and it is stacked with coconuts, and he's just on the tailgate of his pickup truck just slicing coconuts open with a machete and just handing them to people. That's one thing that's really cool about Mexico, is like getting like a couple coconuts every day.
Yeah.
For like,
be more
40
hydrated
pesos
there in the 90-degree weather than you were here.
And so this guy's got all these coconuts, and I think it was the first time Cyprus actually drank coconut water out of a coconut. And
I still haven't even done that.
And he was just so cool to my kids, and so he's just so cool to every. David Avocado Coconut Wolf he's just a sweetheart of a man. He's actually got a Telegram page. I don't know that's my favorite Telegram page is the David Avocado Wolf Coconut, David Avocado Wolf Telegram page. But Anarchapulco is a great time. It is a really, really high quality people there. So like, it's like Pork Fest without the riffraff, because it's kind of expensive. A general admission ticket is $500, and then you got to get yourself to Acapulco, Mexico, and get yourself home. So you got to have your stuff together to get to Anarchapulco. And I'll be blacksmithing, doing man camp like I did last year. I had I already sent a really nice forge, a better anvil, and some different tools down so I could do more things. And I'm going to promote it a little better this year. And I'm also going to do, I haven't got permission yet to do it, but I want to do another workshop on basically how an EMP-proof bug-out truck that you can run on fuels that you can scavenge during the apocalypse. Is what I want to do a workshop on there. But yeah, Anarchapulco is a great time. Check it out, anarchapulco.com.
And then anarchapulco.com/tickets, and then code JAYJ.
That's correct. Nice. For 10% off.
So in the last segment, we were talking about this scandal. I mean, not just the scandal. The scandal's a thing that was talked about a lot in the early 2010s, if you were paying attention, because I didn't hear anything about this before. But the new scandal is that Joe Biden pardoned this absolute monster of a judge who was a part of the scandal. The scandal was called Kids for Cash. I'm going to keep wanting to say Cash for Kids because, there's like Cash for Clunkers and Cash for anything else. But it's Kids for Cash is the official name. So President Joe Biden came under fire last week for commuting the remaining sentence of a former Luzerne County judge who was given 17 and a half years in a federal prison for accepting kickbacks to send children to a private prison he helped build. Biden commuted the sentence of Michael T. Conahan, who was convicted in 2011 for the central role he played in the so-called Kids for Cash scandal last Thursday. So if you heard on, I guess it was this Thursday, that Biden commuted the sentences of about 1,500 people. I heard that, and it was like not public whose sentences he committed immediately, so I kind of lost interest and go read about it further. Well, I still haven't found out who else there were that he pardoned or commuted the sentence of. Oh, I guess it's the same word. He pardoned them. But one of them was this judge, and it was after his own son. So 1,500 if you include his son. It was 1,499 people. Well, one of those people that he pardoned was this guy, Michael Conahan. Conahan, yes. So it says, here's what you need to know about Biden's decision. So, under pressure from criminal justice advocates to pardon more people after pardoning his own son, that happened really quickly, so anyways, Biden commuted the remaining sentences of nearly 1,500 people Thursday. All of these commutations were for people who were already living under house arrest, likely placed there during COVID-19 pandemic.
And most of them, based on what I can tell, I didn't go through the whole list, but I heard about a lot of these. They're all bureaucrats. They're all
Not
people
surprising.
who screwed, who violated the constitutional, their constitutional oath of office, which none of them abide by anyways. Just like this woman who embezzled $54 million from some, municipality.
Mm-hmm.
I forget where now.
Yeah,
but
me too.
She, she was pardoned, and then there was multiple other former bureaucrats who essentially used their position of trust and violated their trust with the people. And of course, another guy who's been violating the trust of the people for his entire career is, pedo in chief Biden. And this is classic child trafficking. This judge, I might say in the article you're reading, but it was like $2.1 million is what he got in kickbacks from these private prisons. And these prisons get a ton of money from the federal government to house these kids. So they really have a huge interest in keeping these prisons full, like we were talking about before. So it just goes to show you that there is no justice. The system is absolutely corrupt. And the solution is, I believe, financial correction, US dollar, go to zero.
And it's kind of funny, like, which criminal justice advocates, because I'm sure we know, like, hundreds of people who are technically criminal justice advocates, but they're not talking about these people necessarily. They're talking about Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah, and these guys are put on house arrest, and they've actually committed crimes.
Yeah.
They've actually committed injury. They actually stole property. You guys, like Ross, why? How come he's not on house arrest?
Right.
Yeah, even like you listen to Lynn talk about what the warden's got to say about him and the prison guards, that he's like a really good guy. Kind of the same stuff they say about Ian. Ian doesn't cause any trouble. He's always helpful. He's an asset wherever he is. And similar things. And it's just but Ross and Ian are political prisoners.
Yep.
It's bottom line.
If they put a bureaucrat in prison at all, they're probably, if I'm going to be a conspiracist about it, they're probably getting some kind of treatment that we don't know anything about. But on top of that, they're going to be the ones getting sent to their homes.
Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Same thing. When he was in prison, he was able to go home every day.
Oh, really?
And they have to have done something really bad, and it has to be really obvious, too. Otherwise, bureaucrats are pretty well immune.
Yeah, if they don't get caught, then they're just not going to get caught, and then they're going to be the ones that get pardoned, along with Joe Biden's son, the crackhead. So, not that I'm saying people should go to prison for putting a drug in their body.
And I agree with pardoning Hunter for the gun charges, because
I agree with it too.
You have a right to bear arms, and there's a whole gun thing that a lot of he was charged with shouldn't even exist. And also on the taxes, because taxation is theft.
But that's when you pardon all the people with those type of charges.
It was a blanket pardon, so he's also pardoning for all of the actual legit crimes he committed, like the stuff with the buying the influence with Burisma. I mean, the reason that like 1 million Ukrainians are dead is because of Hunter Biden right now.
That's
quite
probably not
literally
an exaggeration at all.
That's what the Burisma thing is the Bidens put a little money in their pocket for using the U.S. military to strong arm a country.
We do have a caller on the line, so I'm going to go to see what they want to talk about. I think you're Skeeter on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
You know why Ross is in on house arrest?
I am going to start dropping your calls if you keep doing the laugh.
Sorry. You know what? So, yeah, you can't put someone on house arrest when he actively uses Bitcoin to hire assassins. You know that, Jay, right?
He didn't do that. That was Feds that was doing that.
Not only that, but that's not even his charge. That wasn't what he was charged with.
You were unable to come up with any evidence.
Yeah, it was. Let's see. Okay, so the judge already found this as a finding of fact in this first case in New York, that he was a murder for hire.
That didn't happen.
Right.
Why are you lying? Why you call an international? Why you call a national radio show and just tell lies?
Jay, where's your? Hold on. Let me address Jay. Where's the evidence to show that the Feds used that Bitcoin to hire assassins or use?
They used because
right now
it was they testified.
To the assassin.
FBI agents testified that they went on SilkRoad.com. looking for murder for hire, offering to pay for it. And then it came out that the guys that were offering murder for hire on SilkRoad.com, that were removed multiple times from SilkRoad.com for offering murder for hire, were federal agents also. I heard it from Ross's mother. I've heard it from other people.
Of course, Ross has his mother out there on the tour lying for him. So how do you explain?
She's not lying at all. You're lying.
You still haven't brought up any of your actual evidence. So, I don't know why we're still having this conversation. You're the one making a claim.
If you want to look it on the blockchain.
Yeah, the Feds can make Bitcoin transactions too.
And they had login access to the DPR account.
Yeah, some of them got charged for going and stealing the Bitcoin.
Jay, you're proposing that the feds concocted that transaction. They in the blockchain. They had 3,000 Bitcoin to spend. They sent it
the
to
way
this
I understand
wallet.
it, that's what happened.
They faked the chat logs and then planted it on Ross's computer.
There you go.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yep.
They got nothing better to do, man.
That's what they do all the time.
How did they plant the wallet on Ross's computer?
The same way they plant porn on people's computer, the same way they plant all kinds of stuff. This is probably the same way they set up this.
They did that.
Probably the same way they planted all this stuff in a backpack of this poor bastard that was sitting at a McDonald's, probably minding his own business.
Yeah, I really
I think that was another setup too.
Well,
This is all that the feds do. This is how they operate. They have to constantly make sure that they're creating an enemy. They're funding people. They fund all the local terrorists. All of if you look into all of these, like the '93 World Trade Center bombing, that guy was provided all. He was provided all the stuff by federal informants.
Yeah, you can listen to his phone call to his FBI handler telling him, "Hey, I'm not really comfortable with this," and the FBI handler telling him, "No, it's okay. Go ahead." The call was about a payment discrepancy originally, but that's where the conversation went. Is he's like, you told me I was going to use a fake bomb. This is a real bomb. I'm pretty uncomfortable with this. And then his handler's like, no, you just got to go through with it, and we'll get you paid.
And now we have an algorithm that's out there that NSA, CIA, FBI, I'm sure they use this technology to find the mentally ill people that are being created by the poor food, the seed oils, the government indoctrination programs, the fact that, most people who are 20 or 25 years old that are living in any urban area, right, or grew up in an urban area, have been programmed by an algorithm their entire brain development life because their parents used it as a pacifier and a babysitter. An algorithm figures out who these people are. So now it's real easy for anybody who wants to create a false flag sort of attack, who wants to set somebody up to go do something bad, just like with the Gretchen Whitmer. There was 3/4 of the people involved, and
the majority of the conspirators were federal agents.
Were federal agents, and they probably targeted these guys, because the algorithm found them on social media. And I even know people that I grew up with that were just sort of weak-minded, grew up in really poor situations, had some type of abuse and abandonment, whatever, growing up, and it wouldn't be hard for me to convince them to go do something awful, or anybody else, and
for
those
some money.
Yeah, for whatever, for money, for fun, because they're bored, because this will make you look
gotta
cool.
Make a new friend.
And
Why would they do that? It's like you don't have to be able to understand it. People on this planet are bad all the time.
Yes, and there's just example after example after example of how the feds have quite literally tailor-picked people who were touched, who were disturbed, who were mentally ill, and now there's a plethora of them. And
especially the more they put into these jails, the more they put into public school.
I mean, and just the fact that people's IQ's been falling for my entire life since the 70s. IQ's been falling.
I noticed it today.
And I believe it has a tremendous a lot to do with the fact that seed oils, the canola oil that your French fries at McDonald's that you're feeding to your kids,
soy oil, corn oil,
are shrinking parts of the brain.
Yep, it's a neurotoxin.
That's a multifaceted problem.
Yeah, all kinds of different things it does.
But there's fluoride, and there's there's so many.
And seed oils itself is a multifaceted problem because it does things systemically to your whole body, including being a neurotoxin. Well, I googled something to bolster his own case for him to see if I could find anything about it. And basically, what I found was that all the things that the judge used to make this finding of fact at sentencing, not during the trial, that she used to bolster his sentence, Ross Ulbricht's sentence, and give him a 2 life sentences plus 40 years without chance of parole sentence for running a website. It was all what we were saying, it was all things on the internet that could be easily faked by feds. And then she acknowledged, it says there was an acknowledgement that some of the communications might have been influenced by corrupt federal agents, Karl Mark Force IV and Sean Bridges, who were involved in the investigation but later convicted of crimes themselves. However, the judge allowed this evidence to be used, stating its probative value outweighed the prejudicial effect against Ross, especially since the actual murders did not occur.
Yeah, and in a system where they've said they can indict a ham sandwich, this is so blatantly they have to get rid of that evidence because it's corrupted by, misbehaving agents that they couldn't use it. It was so blatantly obvious that that's what they modified it to. Is that, well, this may have happened.
And they didn't bring
Judge
it in trial
Catherine Forrester also said that she was giving him an excessively harsh punishment because of his ideologies.
Because of his ideology, she did say that, and also deterrent for future people who want to do the same thing.
And these judges, it is a prerequisite that you have to be despicably evil to become a federal judge to begin with.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have to be a pedophile or a child trafficker or a member of the bar association, whatever. You got to have like these evil prerequisites, before you become a judge.
I got major pedophile vibes from Ian's judge, Joseph LaPlante in Keene, and then I found out that he is currently a boys wrestling coach, and I was just like, well, that's
kind of adds up.
Not that saying all boys wrestling coaches are pedophiles, but if you wanted to be a pedophile and get your body all over a little boy, that's what you do. And the other thing is that they didn't bring this up during trial. They brought it up during sentencing, where the bar is lower. Like, they don't have as many rules they have to follow. They can do whatever the heck they want, say whatever the heck they want during sentencing. And then the judge can say, I'm going to take that into consideration when I give my sentence.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. It's ridiculous. Like at Ian's trial, the old ladies who claim to be victims but were in fact actually victimizing other people a lot of the times, and also
or being victimized by other people.
Just were being victimized by people other than Ian, and then on top of that, a bunch of them signed up to victimize other people to help themselves. Anyways, they all were saying the same exact words. They were saying, I want Ian Freeman to suffer for his crimes, and all this stuff that like they didn't say on the stand.
Right.
They can just say whatever they want.
They were coached.
Yeah, it was so obvious because they were like a whole bunch of like 60 to 70-year-old ladies saying, I want this young man to suffer. It's like, and I'm a Christian, that's ridiculous and crazy.
Yep, but not a whisper about the guy who ended up with all the money.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Not a whisper about him. In fact, the one lady who was like, by the way, the FBI never helped me or cared that I told them I could get in touch with that guy. They didn't even sound interested.
Yeah, they're not interested in actually solving crimes or interested in political persecution. That is what the FBI exists for, Skeeter. Political persecution, not helping the people. This is why, and they're constantly setting up people to do crimes just so they could say, hey, look at what we did.
Yep, and like we went and took care of this criminal off the street. And in fact, they're going to want people to think Ross Ulbricht was likely doing things like murder for hire, because otherwise how do they defend the fact that they did all this to him?
Right. 2 life sentences plus 40 years.
Without a chance for parole, too. Like, it's not like he gets to get reevaluated in a few years to see if he can get out. No, he's just, it's a slow death, a slow, torturous death.
I'm looking forward to giving him a hug at Liberty Forum or
I would love
Porkfest.
if he goes to one. I really hope he does. I hope he doesn't, like...
I'm sure he's going to go to Porkfest if he's...
I wouldn't blame him for wanting to be like private for the rest of his life, but
I wouldn't blame him either. It would be great to see him at Porkfest, though.
And then I hope everybody who says I won't vote for Trump because I blah 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 blah, even though it could help Ross, has to go tell him that. And I've been saying that. So in the White House, we're talking about the White House now and what they did to commute people's sentences other than Ross. We brought up Ross because of the last caller, and he was claiming that Ross Ulbricht did things that were not proven, and that's how we got into this whole conversation, because Joe Biden could have pardoned Ross Ulbricht in order to actually stick it to Trump. It would have been funny. I would have supported him doing that. If Joe Biden pardoned Ross Ulbricht, he just takes away Trump's kind of like power when he...
And the J6ers, yeah.
Yeah, and the J6ers. That would be a really funny way of doing it. And honestly, he would face less backlash from the lefties if he just pardoned Ross Ulbricht. But he didn't, because he's just an evil person. More Free Talk Live coming up.
It's probably your second biggest investment, especially lately. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Your car has been a pain at the pump, but gas prices aren't the only way you may be burning money. Have you had a minor fender bender? If it's just a dent, you might be able to save the deductible and keep your insurance premium as is. Grab your bathroom plunger, stick it into the middle of the dent, and pour hot water over the area. Then pull hard. Repeat as necessary. And if your headlights look foggy, skip that squirt bottle product. Simply rub on toothpaste. Let it sit for a minute, then rub off with a clean cloth. And that spray that restores your dashboard and other interior surfaces, save the money. Apply olive oil with coffee filters. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. The United States Congress spent much of this week trying to avoid a government shutdown ahead of an end-of-Friday deadline. President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk came out against an agreed bipartisan deal, demanding an increase to the debt ceiling. FSN's Benji Heyer was covering the proceedings from Capitol Hill.
There was a deal that was struck by lawmakers on both sides. They were close to a voting on that proposal that would have kept the government funded into next year. That shutdown due to kick in at the end of Friday. That was until Donald Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance torpedoed the deal, calling it, quote, suicidal and a betrayal of the country. For a number of reasons, one of which that it didn't include the debt ceiling raise, the limit on which the US can borrow money. Trump wants to see that happen whilst Joe Biden is in office, so that any blowback lands on him, not Trump. So that deal was effectively dead. A new deal was proposed, backed by Donald Trump, but not the Democrats. They called it laughable.
The man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was flown to New York on Thursday, where he was indicted on new federal murder charges. Luigi Mangione chose not to fight extradition from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The leader of ISIS was killed in an American airstrike in Syria, according to US officials. US Central Command forces said they conducted a precision airstrike targeting Abu Yusuf on Thursday. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
In a statement, US Central Command said it was part of its ongoing commitment to, quote, disrupt and degrade efforts by terrorists to plan, organise and conduct attacks against civilians and military personnel. Following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, there's been concern that terrorist groups like ISIS could fill the power vacuum left behind in the country.
At least 3 people died this week in a mass shooting at a Christian school in the US state of Wisconsin, including the 15-year-old female shooter. It happened at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison. This week in France, Dominique Pellicot, the former husband of Gisèle Pellicot, was found guilty of aggravated rape and sentenced to 20 years in jail in a case that shocked the country. He recruited dozens of men online to rape his wife after he repeatedly drugged her. FSN's Ross Cullen sent this report from Paris.
This has been a case that has stunned France. 3.5 months of a trial which revealed the scale of Mr. Pellicot's organised abuse of his ex-wife for a period of 9 years, raping her and inviting men he met online to come and rape her while he filmed the attacks and while she was comatose after he had drugged her. Gisèle Pellicot was cheered by the public earlier in the day as she arrived to the verdicts.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. Don't be scared because of the way I treat Skeeter, because I'm very nice to every single caller except Skeeter, because he's just like, it's like you don't respect people, you don't get respect back. He's awful. He's a terrible person. He's probably an FBI agent. And anyways, you can call 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay.
And we have a caller already on the line, so let's go right to the phones. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Yeah, the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. It's important for people to understand that these business people are, running businesses. They have to compete against each other, and the most successful ones are the ones that do the most cost cutting. And part of the problem is that employers are forbidden to hire you and give you a full-time job unless they also provide you with health insurance and spend tons of money on the health insurance that doesn't do you any good. And if they give you a job, let's say they give you a full-time job and they're not going to provide the health care, then some of the workers would file some papers with the government, and some paper shufflers would shuffle some papers. And, members of Congress who pass these terrible laws are only babbling and scribbling. Ultimately, the judge would order the employer to provide health insurance, and when the employer still refuses to do so, the cops would come and take the employer away. So it's the fault of cops that businesses have to provide outrageously expensive health care. It's the fault of cops that some perfectly qualified technicians cannot just go set up a perfectly qualified laboratory and make insulin for a lot less and then sell it, because they get rated not by members of Congress and not by the judges or the prosecutors, but by cops.
The order followers.
So, the dogs, the people who carry the stuff out for the people who don't want to get their hands dirty.
And the thing is here also, if the laws are deficient, however, about making profits by cutting back, and the system is deficient in providing a due process, the cops cannot just go and arrest Brian Thompson for making more money and violating laws that don't exist yet. You can't really blame the cops for that much. So in all fairness to them, it's not their fault when laws are deficient. It's when they enforce laws that are unjust. And so it would have been better if he hadn't gone out and targeted the CEO of United Healthcare, when it's not entirely his fault. It's the fault of cops.
Yeah, and I think that that particular CEO was murdered because he was scheduled to testify in a case that had something to do with Nancy Pelosi's insider trading that she's been doing.
Whoa, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, the only place I heard about it actually was, I did hear about a couple places, but I think Luke Rudowski had mentioned it, and also it was on the David Avocado Wolf page, our channel, Telegram channel, in multiple things. But that makes sense. Generally, when there's people and just like there's Boeing whistleblowers who were set to testify that died,
Yeah.
and
what the caller is saying kind of makes me think about just another reason I think this whole thing was faked in some way. Like maybe it was just somebody, they faked this crazy teenager who's mad about his back surgery just so they could take out a guy who was going to testify something, Nancy Pelosi being implicated. I could see that being the case, because think about it. How many people get killed by cops and maimed and harmed in general by cops every single day, and nobody ever goes and kills cops back? I'm not saying they should. I'm saying that never ever happens, and yet we're supposed to believe some guy killed the CEO of his healthcare agency instead of his doctor who harmed him. I'm not saying he should. I'm simply saying this to me is evidence that's not true, because I think about it all the time that nobody goes and does anything to anybody who is actually responsible for harming them, because they're too comfortable. They're way too comfortable to fight back for themselves. Somebody harms them, like the cop that arrested them, breaks their arm or something. Nobody goes and kills that cop, and I'm not saying they should. I believe that violence begets more violence, but I'm just saying, since that never happens, how am I supposed to believe that this guy made this whole plan to kill the CEO of a Like, how is he even going to know he was there, at the conference?
Yeah, I don't buy it. And his lawyer is saying he was framed. And, with the algorithm, basically anyone who's using Facebook, Instagram, X, especially all of them, and is very active and doing all kinds of things and is constantly having their phone with them, and they constantly are have their high powered tracking device with the ability to track them and all this stuff. About anybody could be framed.
Yeah, because they could have just used their records from social media to find the person who fit the profile the most. This guy actually maybe did post about being upset about his back pain. Well, they have the perfect person to frame.
Yep.
And that was one thing that I got out of this when I was talking about it on the show with Mr. Penguin on a Monday. I was like, wow, that is a great reason to be more private on social media. I feel like it's too late for me, but anything else, caller?
Yeah, well, it's important to remember when I say babbling and scribbling, I mean, like these lawmakers, one of them makes a motion to amend a motion, and another one signs an autograph on a document. It's the cops that maliciously enlisted into an organized force that is on a mission to intimidate everybody into complying with the unjust laws.
And they're supposed to have, their own ability to decide what things to enforce. I can't remember the word.
Officers' discretion.
Discretion.
Let me mention some cops, on the other hand, I believe a lot of them cop the attitude that if you don't like the laws that they enforce, then you should go and get the laws changed, as if you somehow have that power. What are they supposed to do? Clone themselves so they can be more numerous on election day? You're in a country that is overrun with crazy, deranged, depraved, degenerate,
low
selfish,
IQ,
greedy voters who don't give a fire truck about somebody else's rights or the plight of the person suffering from violations of those rights. So they just, this one, I like the color of the campaign button, so I'm going to elect this one to the United States Senate. And let's see now, for representative in Congress, this one lives right down the street from my sister-in-law, and she told me to vote for this one. And so it's a complete waste.
Then
when they are put on notice on the 6 o'clock news, here's how it's going to work. If you drive too fast, you pay the price in U.S. dollars, and nobody gives a flying duck which serial numbers or which Federal Reserve Bank issued which notes. And if you vote wrong, you're going to wind up paying the price in cops' blood, and nobody's going to care which badge numbers or which agency issued which badges. That's the only way they're ever going to care.
And there's so many more elements to this too. Like, for example, we can't even verify who you voted for when you vote with an electronic voting machine, or you have a voting machine like in New Hampshire. It takes the ballot and it scans the images on the ballot and it prints out a receipt, but it can't give me each individual a little 2-inch snip of paper with a receipt saying listed off who you voted for. This is getting tallied now. This is my actual receipt.
Mm-hmm. What they got to do? All they got to do is go on.
Yeah, everything should be hand counted.
Or on the blockchain, and you could easily go and look at it yourself.
You could put each ballot or face down on a flatbed scanner and stamp it with a number afterwards, and put it on a flatbed scanner, put the picture of it on the elections website, and the machine has figured out which ovals are darkened by scanning at the image, and now you have a list of all the serial numbers that have a vote for the libertarians, and a list of serial numbers for all the bad candidates that have votes for them too. And then people can just look at the list and click any serial number on the list and see a picture of that serial number. They could be pre-printed by check printing firms, and you peel after they voted. You don't know which ballot was cast by which voter, so you peel off the protective tape that reveals the serial number underneath it.
And then that tape you peel off has your serial numbers, so you're able to remember which one you had, and then go audit it on the site.
You wouldn't be. No, but I'm saying every number is accounted for. If that voting station got 10,000 ballot numbers, 2001 through 3000, 10,000, 20,001 through 30,000, then you look at all of those. You check in, every number is accounted for, and how many of them had a vote for your candidate and how many had a vote for bad candidates. And so you can see that the election was taken care of correctly. You need ranked choice voting so that people won't be afraid to vote for libertarians just because the libertarians won't win, because even if they don't win, you've got your second choice because you think Trump is so bad that you'd even rather have Harris. So you do one and then Harris as number two, but then at least you voted correctly by voting first choice for the libertarians. And then you also need to have an electorate that actually starts to care about other people's rights. And you can't have,
you can't just have
a test, because it would be abused. They abused literacy tests where you had to be able to read and understand the state constitution in the English language, and they applied them. They made black people pass the test and answer questions for it, and white folks were just allowed to brush right through. And so any of those would be abused the same way. But you got to have guilt trip these voters when cops get themselves killed for enforcing unjust laws, like an unjust law against providing insulin at fair market prices. Then you got to say, see what happens when you vote for candidates who do that, and see what happens when you elect candidates. In North Carolina, back on April 29th, 8 cops got shot because they were trying to arrest a guy on a federal warrant for being a convicted felon in possession of a firearm. That federal statute is not supported by any constitutional language empowering Congress. It's left up to the states. So you say, well, see what happens when you vote for candidates who don't care about the doctrine of enumerated powers.
I don't think there are any
99% of them will say, what's that?
I don't think there are any candidates on the ballot that care. That's the thing. It's like voting isn't the solution to getting people that care in charge of us. But at least if we're going to have this crap, and one thing that is very obvious is that they're lying about there being no way to count the votes correctly.
Oh, yeah.
The blockchain,
of course they are,
is the easiest.
Right.
It's the most
perfect.
Yeah,
there are plenty of ways they could find out whether...
But exactly, his way is just as good if we were going to do it a way that's better than how we do it now.
One thing I heard that I really like, and I heard Tim Pool mention this a couple of times. Tim Pool's like, voting should be, your ballot is a blank piece of paper, and if the name is not spelled correctly, then you basically, the vote doesn't count.
Why?
So, which I think is great. If you like put on someone's name and it's not spelled correctly, the name has to be spelled correctly.
Why?
Why? Because instead of just going off and checking off multiple choice, and so what happens is the parasite class votes for their parasite group. So like mostly like Democrats will vote for just Democrats, for example. But if you just actually have to write in the name of who you're voting for because the ballot is blank, then that would basically eliminate all of the stupid people from, forcing their stupid will upon you. And the other thing that happens in New Hampshire, which and everybody can attest to this who's ever been to a town meeting. So in New Hampshire, on a local level, you have these town meetings once a year. So in my town of 4,500 people, you have a town meeting that literally 65 people show up to. 65. And, 53 of them are all parasite class employees. They all work for the highway department. They're secretaries. They work for some nonprofit NGO, for example. Like I saw, some friends of mine in town who are politically involved and they consider themselves like libertarian or conservatives are like, yeah. All those people voting for all of these increases, everyone putting their hand up for the increase is literally a government employee. They are actual parasite class. So
they shouldn't be allowed to vote. Correct. They shouldn't be allowed to do that, what you're saying.
Correct. And they get the day off of work and they still get paid for it to go vote. And a lot of people, and it's a Saturday, which they have the day off work anyways. But like in my town, like 3 years ago, they were going to have an ordinance to basically ban motorcycles from tons of these off-highway vehicle trails. We got like a really good like motorcycle dirt bike network thing in town, snowmobiles, whatever. It's all these trails. And
are they like public or?
Yeah, it's like $25. You can get like a sticker for your snowmobile, your four-wheeler. You can go riding all these things. And so there's a couple of people who I would refer to them as woke libtards. These these academics that are in town that work for the college. A whole bunch of them like, oh, we hate these dirt bikes and motorcycles.
They
And
make noise.
yeah, they make noise. And it's a noise racket, and they wanted to do so. That was the most amount of people that ever showed up to a town meeting. So what they did, this was the last measure on the ballot. So what they did is somebody amended to, oh, can we make this soon? There's a bunch of people that want to leave and go home, and they want to vote on this. So the room emptied. There was like 350 people in the room, and then as soon as they and like all the Paris, like 53 people voted yes for this noise ordinance, and then the rest of the 300 some odd people voted no.
Nice.
And but as soon as that vote was done, they all left. And I'm like, hey, where are you guys going? They're going to raise your taxes. They're going to give all these people who voted against you, who
I
voted.
drive my motorcycle.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
all they
don't
cared
care
about.
if you
They didn't
spend
care
my
about
money.
anything. We're going home. We're not hanging around here all day.
That's
It's
so
the land of the free time.
Like the one guy, he's a neighbor of mine, and he's a truck driver. I'm like, dude, I can't believe you're leaving. He's like, man, I got to get in my truck and go to work. I got a load of lumber on my truck. I got to get delivered.
Yeah, and the other people that are staying, well, they are getting
Yeah.
paid to be there.
They don't really have to work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then like, 4 months later, he's like, my property tax is $17,500 this year. And I'm like, yeah, you might have, you and all your friends could have really had a radical change on that, not let the contract for the, for these school teachers go through. And these school teachers union, they're all horrible people. They all endorse pedophiles and give contributions to the Democrats, because the Democrats are basically all pedophiles.
Babysitters.
Yep.
School teachers are awful. Yep.
Yeah, they are very awful. Especially a bunch of the modern ones, and a bunch of the old timers are just like, I'm done with it as soon as I can be, because they can't stand all the wokeism, what's going on. But thankfully, New Hampshire is number one in the country for homeschooling, from what I understand. And it got that. It was pretty high before the scamdemic, but during the scamdemic, just so many parents just pulled their kids out of school.
Wow.
If that's you, if you're a homeschooling parent, thank you for your service.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
so
excellent.
much more of a service than these public school teachers, and they'd say, "But I have 30 kids." Yeah, but you have 30 kids. You're just indoctrinating.
And then these public school
abusing.
teachers, you were talking about how like the insurance companies, they're basically forced to, the companies are forced to provide benefits. So like these school teachers don't even make enough money to rent an apartment in the district they work in. They don't. They make very little money.
They didn't do the math before they signed up to do this job.
Right,
and then they're mad.
And they got, $250,000 in student loan debt, going into this. They can't rent an apartment because they're getting paid like $16-18 an hour. And like the minimum wage in New Hampshire is $25 in the real economy. I can't hire anyone for less than $25 an hour. I got a 16-year-old kid working for me a couple of days a week for $15 an hour, and he's probably going to be shortly worth all of $35 an hour because he's really good. But and then you got but the teachers are getting paid $16-17 an hour, and the rest of it is in benefits and pensions that landowners are forced to pay, or the cops will come kill you if you don't pay the property taxes, is the bottom line. And so and then these pension programs, like I said, from what I understand, I'm not a financial expert, this is not financial advice, but they're all the public employee pension programs are all run by basically newbies and rookies in the financial industry. And I have a handful of financial buddies, and they're like, oh yeah, like everybody's first job is for basically handling like municipal pension funds and stuff like that. And so, but it doesn't matter how bad you screw that up, because these pensions are guaranteed to perform at a certain rate and a certain number, and they just raise the taxes on the taxpayers. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
The teachers, by the way, you mentioned like old teachers are probably better and then they leave, but the ones that are really old and stay are usually some of the worst people I've ever met in my whole entire life. Some of my old lady teachers were the worst, and I didn't even have this one teacher in my third grade in Minglewood Elementary School in Tennessee, Clarksville, Tennessee, Miss Walker. Anyone who went there would be like, oh, I know who you're talking about.
So was she single?
I don't know, but
did she have
I was
any
in
kids?
third grade.
Yeah.
I don't know that either. But she's also really old. You could tell by looking at her. And she would scream at the class all day, so loud and so obnoxiously that all the other classrooms in the hallway could hear it all the time. And I remember me and my friends, our third grade sleepover with my friend Jupiter's mom was in the room, like hanging out with us, talking to us. We're all complaining, like some of them had Miss Walker and some of us just have to hear it all day. And I remember in third grade, I was like, she's probably not able to be fired because she has tenure. And Jupiter's mom was like, you're so smart, Bonnie. But yeah, The ones that stay are even worse.
They're even worse because they're the ones that have accepted that what they're doing is child abuse, and they're willing to just keep doing it.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. That woman, I mean, like, how's that not child abuse? Just scream at kids all day.
Yeah, if you do that job for more than 5 years and you haven't figured out that you're abusing children, you're not very bright.
And the thing is, they don't want them to be very bright. They just like the
followers, yeah.
Like the cops, for example. New Haven, Connecticut got busted years ago. If you had an IQ of over 104, you could not be a cop in New Haven, Connecticut, because they do not want people who are going to question narratives, who are going to figure things out, being in these positions. So there is a lot of good dudes that are just low intelligence.
Can't put
and
puzzle pieces together.
Right, and it's essentially idiocracy. So these guys that are willing to be, and the thing is anybody who has a pulse that's willing to be a cop and go through all of the programming and the indoctrination and the whole 9 yards is going to be a cop.
Yeah.
And if you show that you're too smart, then they'll work on eliminating you. But usually the really smart, diabolical, evil people skip being a cop and go right to being, they get their training at the Bar Association being an attorney, and then they become a politician, is generally how I, just been working out, best I can tell.
Yeah, that seems so true. One thing that I always think is that the state is even kind of abusing retarded people, and abusing, but also by helping them abuse. There's, just for one example, but I've seen things like this a million times, there's this one guy that's what are the guards in courts called?
The bailiff.
The bailiff. There's a bailiff in the Rochester court that me and Ian have only been to one time, so they're really not used to people asserting their right to film in court. And freaking the news organization we film for has a Supreme Court ruling, and we carry around the piece of paper that says it because of people like this guy. And we had this whole argument with this guy for, it seemed like 30 minutes. No, we actually are allowed to bring our cameras in here. He's like, I'm going to hold the camera at the front until I hear that you're allowed to use it. And he wouldn't look at the thing. It was talking in circles with a complete actual retard, an actual retard. And it's they're just actually using this retard. They're using him for muscle and to just all right, go give these people a hard time. We had to talk to the clerk, and he was screaming, getting all cortisol, it's actually affecting him. And then whenever he found out, he was in the wrong, he was just I was just doing my job. Actually a retard.
Yeah, the good old Nazi defense.
Yeah.
Yep, and he probably gave you that fluoride stare as soon as you told him, you could do this kind of thing, and he's just yeah.
You can see their blood pressure skyrocket as soon as something doesn't comport with their reality.
Yeah, you're trying to do something that's not in the piece of paper. I have the piece of paper that says what to do, and you guys are doing something different. And yeah, it's their blood pressure literally skyrocketing, and they're just at a loss. They can't understand what's going on because
and they're not used to pushback because most people are just swindled by bar maggots, attorneys that go in there and just usher their rights right away. Basically, as soon as you get an attorney, you have no rights anyways. It means that you're an invalid and incompetent in law as soon as you hire an attorney.
That's true. You hired a liar.
Right.
Yep.
And on top of that, they build these places aesthetically so to invoke obedience out of people.
Yeah,
like churches
reverence.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Hamden, Massachusetts, the Superior Court says freedom is obedience to the law.
Oh my God.
No thanks.
603-283-6160. How is that for 1984 for you? 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Call in with whatever's on your mind. Get in on the last hour of the show. More coming up.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. The United States Congress spent much of this week trying to avoid a government shutdown ahead of an end-of-Friday deadline. President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk came out against an agreed bipartisan deal, demanding an increase to the debt ceiling. FSN's Benji Heyer was covering the proceedings from Capitol Hill.
There was a deal that was struck by lawmakers on both sides. They were close to a voting on that proposal that would have kept the government funded into next year. That shutdown due to kick in at the end of Friday. That was until Donald Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance torpedoed the deal, calling it, quote, suicidal and a betrayal of the country. For a number of reasons, one of which that it didn't include the debt ceiling raise, the limit on which the US can borrow money. Trump wants to see that happen whilst Joe Biden is in office, so that any blowback lands on him, not Trump. So that deal was effectively dead. A new deal was proposed, backed by Donald Trump, but not the Democrats. They called it laughable and accused Trump of playing politics.
The man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was flown to New York on Thursday, where he was indicted on new federal murder charges. Luigi Mangione chose not to fight extradition from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The leader of ISIS was killed in an American airstrike in Syria, according to US officials. US Central Command forces said they conducted a precision airstrike targeting Abu Yusuf on Thursday. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
In a statement, US Central Command said it was part of its ongoing commitment to, quote, disrupt and degrade efforts by terrorists to plan, organise and conduct attacks against civilians and military personnel. Following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, there's been concern that terrorist groups like ISIS could fill the power vacuum left behind in the country.
At least 3 people died this week in a mass shooting at a Christian school in the US state of Wisconsin, including the 15-year-old female shooter. It happened at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison. This week, the US Supreme Court said it would hear arguments in January about whether TikTok should be banned in the United States. The Chinese-owned social media app is facing a January 19th deadline to be sold or face a countrywide ban. This week in France, Dominique Pellicot, the former husband of Gisèle Pellicot, was found guilty of aggravated rape and sentenced to 20 years in jail in a case that shocked the country. He recruited dozens of men online to rape his wife after he repeatedly drugged her. FSN's Ross Cullen sent this report from Paris.
This has been a case that has stunned France. 3.5 months of a trial which revealed the scale of Mr. Pellicot's organised abuse of his ex-wife for a period of 9 years, raping her and inviting men he met online to come and rape her while he filmed the attacks and while she was comatose after he had drugged her. Gisèle Pellicot was cheered by the public earlier in the day as she arrived with the verdicts. The other men on trial, some 50 other defendants, were all found guilty of rape and were handed down custodial sentences ranging from 5 to 13 years.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the UK government says it now accepts that a deal it heralded just a few weeks ago as a major triumph regarding the future of the Chagos Islands in the Indian Ocean is now on the brink of falling apart. At issue, the future of Britain's last colony in Africa, islands that the government of Prime Minister Keir Starmer agreed to hand over to Mauritian sovereignty in October. But the new Prime Minister of Mauritius doesn't like the agreement, nor do many Chagos Islanders who say the UK has betrayed them. And President-elect Donald Trump doesn't fancy it either, with his nominee for Secretary of State, Senator Marco Rubio, calling it a serious threat to US national security because Mauritius is allied with China. Daniel Toft is with Friends of the British Overseas Territories, which is calling for a referendum to determine the Chagos Islands' fate.
It's positive news the deal is being reconsidered and is in doubt, but we've still got a long way to go for the UK government to drop its negotiations. They should admit the deal is dead, they should reaffirm their support for the British Indian Ocean Territory, and they should engage in pragmatic and meaningful dialogue with Chagosian communities that they've failed to do so far.
One centrepiece of any future arrangement, the UK's insistence that it will keep control of a military base on Diego Garcia for at least the next 99 years. But even that has not mollified Washington's concern about the island's future. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And that was the Week in Review. That's Feature Story News. Nick Harper reporting.
We turn to Washington, D.C., where America's roommates are holding a rally as part of their new One Vote Doesn't Matter political action campaign. The rally, which drew thousands of roommates, ranging from the guy who keeps all of his groceries in his room to the guy whose name the lease is under, is just a part of a surging grassroots movement to spread the message that one person's vote can't make a difference if you really, really think about it.
You know, this is like the most important election of our lifetime. We just want to get the word out that it's already been decided in some smoke-filled boardroom. You know, I pretty much minored in poli-sci, so I think I get this stuff.
Joining us now is Jason Copeland at a rally in the nation's capital. Jason, how would you describe the energy there?
Yeah, hi, Andrea. I'd say it's a definite chill vibe. I just saw the roommate whose only friend seems to be his younger brother and the guy who just has an air mattress in his room passing out flyers together. Now, the roommates do make some interesting points. The Electoral College it is weird.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That means you can call 603-283-6160 and bring up whatever is on your mind. And I'd like to thank Robbie for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Robbie went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Robbie and everyone who supports us. And again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of being an amplifier. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay.
And thank you to all of our amplifiers. We really do appreciate it. We have a caller on the line, so I'm just going to go right to the phones. Sarah in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind, Sarah?
Yes, it was announced that this state session, they're actually going to talk about drag racers that kill people, and they want to toughen the sentences. And, you know, I'm just like...
When you say drag racers, are you talking about how these guys will just... in the city, they'll just start racing and they're like burning out with their cars and blowing donuts in intersections?
No, the kids will congregate in like an industrial section of the city, and they'll run drag races until the cops show up.
Yeah, we used to do that when I was a kid.
I think they're addressing all of it, Because it shows, I mean, they kill people, they demolish people's houses, they run into their walls. I mean, yeah, all of it. Drag racing, they're racing with each other, doing donuts and everything. And
they also do it on the highway, though. Well, I guess that's not drag racing.
So where we used to do it was this like stretch of road that was like 2 miles, 3 miles, very straight. And we would do a 1/4-mile drag race, and guys would show up there with muscle cars, hot rod, diesel pickup trucks. And there was no street lights. It was, basically in the middle of nowhere. Route 67, Palmer, Massachusetts. And you would just see, like, the starting line, everybody knew where it was because it was just like a couple hundred feet of just rubber being laid, and you'd use both lanes of the road. And I never heard of anybody getting hurt. But I see some of these videos where there's street racing and the sidewalks are full of people. And like and they're doing what's called drifting. You know what drifting is?
Like to kind of turn and let.
Right. So basically, like the drifting thing is they
purposely set it into a slide.
They purposely set it into a slide.
That's what it is, basically, a Mario Mario Kart. So
yeah. So sometimes they slide right into the sidewalk and just mow down just tons of people, which is I mean, what you're talking about,
Has it
Sarah.
ever killed people?
Oh yeah, it's a serious deal. Like this is a big thing in Chicago.
Whoa.
It's basically anywhere there's a whole bunch of liberal-run cities with a whole bunch of welfare recipients that are all drug dealers and hustlers, and they're on welfare and they're scamming and they're getting themselves really sweet, 1,000. You can take these Dodge Chargers and make them 1,000 horsepower for not a lot of money.
That's right.
And it's getting out of hand. The drag racing is actually extremely safe, but it's the street racing where they're racing these Chargers and these Mustangs. And the thing is like
on highways.
No, right in downtown
city
streets. They're doing this. There's videos of it all over the place, and you got all these algorithmic slaves who get their dopamine hit off of their clicks. They're like standing there on the edge of the road watching these cars go by them 140 miles an hour, and and they're 2 or 3 feet from the car. And
they're gonna get a good shot,
and these guys lose a little control, and they kill a bunch of people. Yeah, so are they doing something positive about it down there, Sarah?
Well, it became an issue where actually that's going to be one of the items in the state session up in Santa Fe. It's always been like a city issue. Each city decides to put speeding cameras. It never made it up to a state level. But I guess so many people got their homes demolished. So many people got their walls banged up. And so many people lost loved ones from speeders and drag racers. And I hear it. I live right to a boulevard, right next to like a 1.5 miles from this boulevard. They drag race all the time. I can hear it. Bing, bing, bing. They do it all the time. And, I just kind of, what is amazing is like how long did it have to take for people to come and notice this? That's what's kind of bewildering about the state of New Mexico.
I don't know. I just think that.
Yeah, New Mexico is a horribly run state, and this is where they have the problems. Where you have a bunch of liberal progressives who just basically just do all these things. Like for example, I bet you it would be really, really nearly impossible to put in a legit racetrack or drag strip anywhere around any population area around Albuquerque or Santa Fe, to where they're everywhere and they've been grandfathered in for years now. New Hampshire, there's racetracks everywhere. There's drag strips. There's drag strips in New York, Massachusetts. They've been around for a very long
safe
time.
Ones with a wall
just you can go there and drag race. There's all kinds. So we don't really have those problems here because first off, it's really risky drag racing and street racing, and if you can just there's a track that we used to go to all the time in Lebanon, New York. I forget, Lebanon Raceway, and basically for $50 you can do test and tune night, and you just get in line and you'll get 6 or 7 drag races, and you'll you'll get times. It's really good. And it's a nice track. It's very safe. There's a long runaway. There's barriers between the audience and the pits and the track, so it's safe. But yeah, this thing definitely happens a lot.
Sarah. It's like a state problem is not going to be fixed with more state But what Jay is talking about is something like a private property thing. But just the other day, you called in to say that the people voted down this man who wanted to build some kind of his own sports stadium. So I'm sure that they have all kinds of like
the Trevisani. And then one of the what was the interesting is that he was part of the Thornburg companies, and then they did it like he worked for them. That's how he made his billions. Trevisani, the Mexico United soccer player, and everywhere he tries to build, they try to run him out. But that company, Raymond, lost like $7,000 from like the insider trading, and that's the company he worked for. I was like, wait a minute, because he must have knew when the company was going to close because he was working for him, and then everybody bought their stocks and they lost all their money, and Raymond lost his money. And we're like, what? I think he was a billionaire to begin with. Like, how did he get that money? He made the money from Thornburg's. It was announced. So we looked him up, but he was working for Thornburg's. But see, their stock right now is zero. Thornburg's stock is zero. And then after 7 years, they came back in business. After they become bankrupt, after they ripped everybody's money out.
Well, that's what happens when corporations, businesses get in the pockets with the government. They're not allowed to fail. That sounds like a company that failed, but then was allowed to file bankruptcy and then continue as if that's just another day. Pretty sure Trump has done that too.
And the other thing too, the government steals taxpayer dollars. Like part of this omnibus funding bill was like several $1 million for some sports ball stadium.
Wow.
So all these sports ball stadiums are, and it's all bread and circus. They are built with taxpayer dollars. The sports ball teams are tax exempt. The NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, none of them pay any taxes.
To get the right area of land.
And they take land by eminent domain.
Yeah.
They take parking lots. They charge a ton of money for parking. It's $18 for the crappiest hot dog in the world. It's $18 for a glyphosate filled Coors Light.
Well, it's run by the government, so.
And it's all run by the government. It's all tax exempt. All the businesses that run directly and are getting authority to work, they're all tax exempt. All these sports ball operations are tax exempt. These leagues, the teams, the whole 9 yards, and
it's like
the infrastructure.
Couldn't have it. Well, there's so many fans. We could easily have it in a private.
Right. So as soon as you
market.
start a private guy tries to come in and do something, there's like tons of pushback, red tape. You can't do this.
It's probably the same way with if somebody tried to go and do a drag race in New Mexico. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if like the bureaucrats, the politicians are getting more money because they're doing all these illegal drag racing things. And honestly, with Sarah's opinions she has, I'm pretty sure she's just like one of those busybodies that you were describing who wanted to stop the motorcycles. It's just like, I can barely feel sorry for her. She lives in Albuquerque and she brags about being on welfare. So thank you for the call, Sarah. We have another caller on the line. Kadu in Connecticut. Kadu, what's on your mind?
Nice coat, Bonnie.
Thank you. It's from Walmart.
Exactly. That's why. Stu, what does that shirt say?
The worst part of censorship is censored. Everything is censored. Is censored. Great censored. Trust censor your censor government. So yeah.
The worst part about censorship is everything is great. Trust your government. Yeah, with censorship, censored little marks in the sentence.
Bunch of redactions there.
Yeah, redaction. There's a word. Did you have anything else to talk about?
Jay, I was going to ask, would you be willing to tell Flat Earth Dave about PorcFest?
I'm pretty sure I did tell Flat Earth Dave about PorcFest. I told everybody about PorcFest in New Hampshire when I was down there. But I will specifically tell him now. In fact,
where's he live?
I'll even write your name down. I think Flat Earth Dave's from Canada, right?
Cadu's the one that...
I know...
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Cadu's the one that told him about Free Talk Live, and he called into Free Talk Live, and he got a bunch of his listeners to call into Free Talk Live. But what were you going to say?
I don't know where he's from, but he lives in Connecticut.
Oh, he lives in Connecticut. That's right. He is from Connecticut. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he actually he's buddies with Richard Grove. And Richard.
Yeah, I was just thinking that while you were at Anarchapulco, since he's going to be there, I mean, not that he'd necessarily be a speaker at PorcFest, but maybe just letting him know about it. Because I think when he called in, just the fact that a few of the hosts weren't necessarily, hadn't looked into it or didn't agree with the flat earth. I think I told him in an email that like the New Hampshire thing is like easily just as good as the Acapulco thing, and you got the same kind of anarchist, but I don't know that he believes me.
Did he like see it? Is this a comment, or were you like in a message to him?
I was emailing him when I was telling him to call into Free Talk Live, and I just don't think that he knows about the New Hampshire thing, and that it's easily as good as what they've got going on in Mexico or whatever.
I'll make it a point to talk to him more about it. One thing I can tell you about the flat earthers is they're just really good people. And as for whether the earth is flat or round, I honestly have no opinion on that because I don't have a spaceship. I don't have the bandwidth to look into it. I really don't care. I mean, things are like stuff's working. I mean, whether whichever one's the truth doesn't really matter to me. But one thing I could tell you about is the people who say that the earth is flat, their children are really smart. Their children, I brought my kids down there last year with me, so I hung out at the kids camp a lot. And it's actually pretty cool when you got like 7-year-old kids explaining the flat earth theory to you. It's very cute. But the children of the flat earthers are going to grow up to be useful, competent, and valuable. I can tell you that. And
well, the funny thing was, sorry to cut you off. They did a trip to Antarctica recently where they observed a 24-hour sun, which a lot of flat earthers said can't happen on their flat earth model. And so they observed this 24-hour sun, and that was supposed to be the thing that, disproves the flat earth. But there are flat earthers that have a model that allows for the 24-hour sun. So it might have not been like the total disapproval that they thought it was. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, I'm just saying that like they're good, wholesome people, all the flat earthers I hung out with. In fact, basically the flat earther people, and there was a family we hung out with a bunch too. They have a band called oh darn it, Winsome Kind is their band. They're a Canadian folk band. Really good people.
And it's a family?
Family, yep. So it's a husband and a wife, and their kids are like 9. I don't know, they had 4 kids. One of them was an infant, and the oldest one was like 9. I can't remember all their ages. But like just good, wholesome people, like the kind of people that you want as your neighbor, the kind of people who are going to be just wanting to help you out with stuff. You're going to want to help them out with stuff. The difference really between Anarchapulco and PorcFest is there's some riffraff at PorcFest, but like PorcFest is like real easy to get to, real easy to get a ticket. It's very inexpensive.
It's like way better than any riffraff you see in any old city or town.
Oh yeah. But just compared to Anarchapulco, at Anarchapulco, for example, pretty much everyone there had a VIP ticket, and there's basically open bar for the VIP. And I don't drink. My wife don't drink, and I know the one thing I noticed is like there was a couple people walking around with some kind of alcoholic beverages, but nobody got like drunk. Nobody was like obnoxiously drunk. Nobody was doing any stupid things.
Yeah.
But it's just to where like you'll get some of that at PorcFest. You'll get some like obnoxiously drunk people, but you're also
there was a time people thought a bear ran through.
I still have to work on that. That's probably why I don't think the Earth is a spinning ball. Too much alcohol.
Isn't it always spinning?
But if you talk about any other festivals that I've been to, like I went to this one called Jerry Jam, which is a music festival, and like most of the people there were retired government. No, all the old people were retired government employees that were there, and then a bunch of the young people.
Such free spirits.
A bunch of the young people were like woke type, mentally ill, a bunch of like maybe 20% of them were like old, government retired employees. And I'm like, what do you do for work? Oh, I'm retired. I work for the state of Vermont. I work for the state of New Hampshire, town of blah, blah, whatever, just chatting with people. And the ones that had money seemed to be like, retired government employees or current government employees, or at least looked like they had money to spend. But I got a friend who's a vendor at a bunch of these festivals too, and basically, there's a lot of people just wasted out of their gourd at these music festivals. So you might see a handful of people at PorkFest like that, but PorkFest also has a few thousand people.
You think a lot of these deadheads were statists pretty much and didn't even realize they were, but just basically always been sucking on the government teat?
I would say probably about 30 to 40% of the attendance at the Jerry Jam thing that I went to, definitely.
And the
Absolutely.
thing is, like, I see this propaganda all the time where you have to read some stupid memoir for school or something, and it's about somebody who they're ostensibly like some kind of a hippie, but what did they do throughout their life? They helped push legislature that blah 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 that has like a feel good vibe.
Work
to
for
it.
some UN inspired funded NGO. Like Granite State Progressives or something.
They passed the most caring care of all careness act. It's all called care. Yeah.
Jim Morrison's dad helped start Vietnam, so.
Whoa. I think that you kind of brought that up before, but.
A lot of the counterculture was a product of Yeslen Institute and deep state type actors.
CIA testing LSD on the population to see what would happen.
I don't mean to be talking bad about PorkFest. I love PorkFest. I have attended.
At least you'll be around a bunch of people who are higher IQ than average,
right.
Even if they like to get drunk or don't particularly care about social norms.
But just there was an open bar there at Anarchapulco, and you have opportunities at Anarchapulco to do like all kinds of like psychedelics, but it's like very like intentional, like and you're doing it with like someone who's like a shaman guide. I didn't do any of that stuff, but there was not. It was if there was somebody who was going to be a belligerent a-hole there, they would have been, and but nobody was out of control. Nobody lost their faculties in any way. Nobody was even rude. I like everybody was just really on good behavior, but they're just those kind of people anyways, and it's just got that kind of vibe. And when I mentioned to Jeff Berwick at Friday, the very end of the Anarchapulco, I'm like, hey, this is really great. I've gone to all kinds of freedom festivals. This is by far the premium freedom festival. It's like PorkFest, but with no riffraff. And he's like, well, you should have been here, I don't remember what he said, several years ago. And there was riffraff. There was all kinds of problems.
Riffraff lives at your farm.
Yeah, sure. There's riffraff everywhere.
No, I'm just kidding.
But actually, no riffraff really at my place. I asked those people to leave immediately if they.
I was making a joke about Colin.
Yeah. So, anyways,
make sure you don't get hit. Make sure you don't get hit with a hurricane. Didn't they get hit with a hurricane last time?
They did. They got hit with a hurricane.
Like a month before or two.
A couple months before the event last year, they got hit with another nasty hurricane that came back in twice.
Yeah.
Not long ago.
That was a weird thing too.
And also, let us know if that Tesla machine does anything when he hooks you up to that thing that he's obsessed with. Let us know if it heals your every ill. No, this is Jeff Berwick. He's
Tesla machine. So
Tesla machine, it pulls in like plasma from the ether.
Yep.
So more of a Wilhelm Reich orgone machine, orgone accumulator.
Royal Rife type technology. Sure.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't realize how popular Jeff Berwick was until he started mentioning my name on his on some of his walk and talks that he does, and I just start having customers of mine that I had 20 years ago when I was in the hay business. I had probably 17 or 18 people, I think it was, contacted me, sent me a regular text message. Some sent me Facebook messages, but I didn't get them because I don't go on Facebook. But they told me about this, and then they're like, oh, yeah, you're going to be at Anarchapulco. That's so awesome. You watch Jeff's videos. And then recently I've been getting all kinds of messages from people that are like, hey, what do you know about this Tesla machine? I don't know nothing about it. And Jeff just rants and raves about it. And then so I get I get two kinds of commentary on it. Like, well, he also ranted and raved about Golf's Gulch, and that didn't work. That kind of blew up. And
was that like
that was like an intentional community in Chile that Jeff was kind of like the marketing guy of.
Wasn't he like involved with like Mount Gox or a different one like that?
I never heard about Mount Gox. I don't see how he'd even have anything to do with that.
Something else. Sorry, I actually don't think it was Mount Gox. It was some kind of like something like that.
Oh, him and Joby Weeks and that deal.
The Bit Club.
Bit Club.
Yeah. So he markets a lot of things, but he's got, he claims it's good. I'm going to use that Tesla machine. In fact,
definitely tell us what happens.
I am definitely going to use it. My wife's going to use it, and I have about a dozen people who swear they'll spend $10,000 on it if I say it's good.
Whoa.
So
603-283-6160. I didn't even realize it was for sale. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Nick Harper with the Week in Review. The United States Congress spent much of this week trying to avoid a government shutdown ahead of an end-of-Friday deadline. President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla CEO Elon Musk came out against an agreed bipartisan deal, demanding an increase to the debt ceiling. FSN's Benji Heyer was covering the proceedings from Capitol Hill.
There was a deal that was struck by lawmakers on both sides. They were close to a voting on that proposal that would have kept the government funded into next year. That shutdown due to kick in at the end of Friday. That was until Donald Trump and his vice president-elect J.D. Vance torpedoed the deal, calling it, quote, suicidal and a betrayal of the country. For a number of reasons, one of which that it didn't include the debt ceiling raise, the limit on which the US can borrow money. Trump wants to see that happen whilst Joe Biden is in office so that any blowback lands on him, not Trump. So that deal was effectively dead. A new deal was proposed, backed by Donald Trump, but not the Democrats. They called it laughable.
The man suspected of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was flown to New York on Thursday, where he was indicted on new federal murder charges. Luigi Mangione chose not to fight extradition from Pennsylvania, where he was arrested. The leader of ISIS was killed in an American airstrike in Syria, according to US officials. US Central Command forces said they conducted a precision airstrike targeting Abu Yusuf on Thursday. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
In a statement, US Central Command said it was part of its ongoing commitment to, quote, disrupt and degrade efforts by terrorists to plan, organise and conduct attacks against civilians and military personnel. Following the collapse of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, there's been concern that terrorist groups like ISIS could fill the power vacuum left behind in the country.
At least 3 people died this week in a mass shooting at a Christian school in the US state of Wisconsin, including the 15-year-old female shooter. It happened at the Abundant Life Christian School in Madison. This week in France, Dominique Pellicot, the former husband of Giselle Pellicot, was found guilty of aggravated rape and sentenced to 20 years in jail in a case that shocked the country. He recruited dozens of men online to rape his wife after he repeatedly drugged her. FSN's Ross Cullen sent this report from Paris.
This has been a case that has stunned France. 3.5 months of a trial which revealed the scale of Mr. Pellicot's organised abuse of his ex-wife for a period of 9 years, raping her and inviting men he met online to come and rape her while he filmed the attacks and while she was comatose after he had drugged her. Giselle Pellicot was cheered by the public earlier in the day as she arrived to the verdicts.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And we've been podcasting since podcasts began. Literally, Ian and Mark were one of the first people doing podcasts at all. But we're launching a new podcast. Anyway, our new podcast is a 30 to 45 minute show releasing once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. The existing radio archive isn't going anywhere. This is just a new show designed from the start to be a podcast, so check it out at freetalkcast.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie,
Stu,
and Jay.
And I want to go right to the phones. We have a caller on the line, Dana in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi, everybody, and Merry Christmas, since I probably won't talk to you guys.
Oh, Merry Christmas.
Christmas, yeah, it's in the middle of the week. So until next Saturday. So I'm calling about that, God, I just really hate stupid people.
Me too.
And I really hate when stupid people have access to phones. So that Skeeter guy that was commenting on Ross Ulbricht, I couldn't even believe what came out of his mouth when he said, now, I don't know all the ins and outs like you guys do about Ross's case. I know the basics, the periphery. But the comment he made that a court in Manhattan, or he said New York, a court in New York found him guilty, and the government had all this stuff on him and blah, blah, blah. Because the government or juries or judges have never done anything dishonest in their life. Are you kidding? That was it. The most recent was President Trump. How could he not get that? It came out that all those files, those top secret files that were down in Mar-a-Lago, and they photographed them. They didn't do that to Biden. And those file folders that said top secret on them, it's already come out in the news that they have fake papers in them.
Whoa.
It was a setup for a photo op for the FBI.
Top secret. Yeah, that's crazy.
That both of those judges, those dirty judges that homely, my God, that Judge Engeron in the E. Jean Carroll assault case, that he refused to let them provide evidence and did all kinds of illegal stuff. In cases like that, I don't understand how SCOTUS doesn't just step right in and shut it down. That these are dirty judges. They're in your face dirty, and Juan Merchan is another one over that real estate case. This is crazy. That if you know the law, even the basics, just the periphery of the law, you could see what was being done to that guy by the judges, the juries. This was just nuts. That Jack Smith guy over the election case that he was forced to drop, I can't believe it. And all the criminal behavior that the Bidens have gotten away with because it's been covered up because of the government, everything that's come out, and that moron has the nerve to call you guys and say, oh, well, he was found guilty in New York. Oh, well, then it must be true. My God. I was so mad. I shouldn't have listened to you guys tonight because I knew he was going to piss me off before Christmas.
Aww.
And I'm trying to stay in a state of grace because it's Jesus's birthday coming up. And I was so mad that anybody could be that stupid.
Well, that is where the term righteously angry comes from.
Yep,
Yes,
righteous indignation. And I agree with you. Skeeter always uses that as his evidence. Well, government said so in a court. And those guys, I mean, the number one rule is they make the rules up as they go along. So there's you can't count on them for anything.
The thing is, you guys, I love my country. I love it. I love the idea, the founding. I really love this country. And there are a lot of good people in this country, but I hate our government. They're so damn dirty. And I voted for Trump all 3 times. And so help me God, if he does not clean that government up, this is just
then what?
So out of control. I don't know, because I can't not vote for him again. But I'm thinking about
maybe consider withdrawing your consent, declaring your own independence.
Yeah.
The thing is like expecting Trump to clean it up is, even if Trump, well, first off, if he really wanted to, I don't believe he could. I think
that's what I was saying about Chase Oliver today, but go ahead.
I think the only way that this stuff can be cleaned up is the people absolutely refusing to participate.
Yep.
Like Stu said, withdraw your consent. But you were just talking about all these despicable examples of this, these miscarriages of justice that just have been happening for the past, 40 years. I mean, there's examples everywhere, but in the last 10 years or the last 4 years, it's been insane.
Yeah.
It's really, really ratcheted up.
Yeah, they don't try to hide it at all anymore.
So now, and they're not even hiding it. They're proud of it. There are a lot of the cult member leftists that are just extreme. They got an extremist in this last particular cycle. They're very proud of the corruption. You go talk to some of these people who are they love Biden and Kamala, but they can't tell you anything good that they've done. They can't support anything.
But it's two sides of the same thing. And for example, Trump was recently saying that he wants to immunize all the law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, but anyways, just what a point I was getting to is, all this same debauchery happened in Rome shortly before it collapsed with all the stuff we got going on with, they're just very proud of their corruption, whether it's, the manipulating the children, the whole gender nonsense, and all this thing with the corruption with the government, and just $36 trillion debt, which is, just a small piece of the debt, for example, we're just, what we need to do is influence our invest in our posterity, influence them, do what we can.
Oh, so more than just doing nothing.
Right.
So here's the thing.
Not withdrawing consent is not doing nothing. But
I agree.
We got to withdraw consent, but we also have to basically encourage and invest into our posterity, so the children grow up to be competent, confident, useful, and valuable, and then they won't be begging government to support them. And all the people who support the Democrats that I know are essentially useless in the real world. If they didn't exist anymore, they didn't show up to work, actually the world would be even better.
Yeah, I'm an HR lady. I wasn't accusing you of saying that we should do nothing. And thank you for the call, Dana. Very well said about Skeeter. I love that. I wasn't accusing you or you, Stu, of saying we should do nothing. But I think it's so short-sighted that so many people talking about this last election who are mad at other people for voting Trump for no other reason than to free Ross, and they're saying, well, you're the reason that the government exists now. It's pretty short-sighted garbage. When there are people out there saying who are doing nothing. They're living in California and they're supposedly libertarians, and then they're complaining about this one thing that somebody who's done so much is still doing so much to get the word out did, because I voted for Trump. And
all the while, I bet those individuals are, perfectly happy paying taxes and making sure that
I don't do that well.
all their government paperwork's in line. And
that's true. And just like on top of that, doing basically nothing, like they do bad, but which is even worse than doing nothing. But they think I'm doing almost nothing now. That is the answer. The answer to anything on this planet where you have the ability to affect the material world, you have arms and legs, it could never be nothing. If it was to do nothing, you would still be a spirit. And I think a lot more people need to listen to Mark Passio when he says the most important thing people need to be doing is to be talking to other people. Because the thing is, I don't think we can convince the whole world, but we still need more people than this this proposed 1% that of the planet that people say are libertarians. I don't even believe that, but we still need more than that. And honestly, I believe we need to all be in the same place, and all three of us are doing that gathering.
A big thing I think that is really being missed by a lot of people, especially people who aren't mentally ill, is that we have a mental illness epidemic that is just out of control, especially in the United States. But in the Five Eye countries, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, most of Europe, there is a huge mental illness epidemic. So one of the things is you see a lot of these mentally ill leftists who become libertarians, and we don't understand that they're mentally ill until after they snap and they go back. So you got like Oliver Chase, I would say, is mentally ill.
Yeah.
Who's Daryl Perry's wife? Jackie. She's definitely mentally ill. She and she,
tons of like private individuals too that you and I know that probably would be kind of mean to name on the air. I absolutely
that redheaded
agree.
Karen girl from Colorado who's in her and Jeremy Kaufman.
Pink-headed.
Her and Jeremy Kaufman go back and forth all the time, and I knew her in Colorado and
With
stuff.
the pink hair?
Yeah,
pink-headed, not redheaded. I'm just kidding.
And she's been to Pork Fest a few times. Yeah, she's all right, but she's mentally ill.
She is mentally ill. She admits to being autistic, but most of these people that think they're autistic, hey, I don't have social skills. That must mean I'm autistic. Like they have all kinds of other problems.
And the left has gotten so radically insane that basically anybody who is identifying as a leftist and actually agrees with any of the modern day lefty policies is quite, as far as I'm concerned, mentally ill.
Yeah, even the ones that claim to be libertarians, it's like they never fail to prove to me that they're horrible people.
Right, and
even in New Hampshire.
And it's very hard for those who come from the left, because generally, if you're in the left to begin with, especially if you're like 30 years old right now or 20 years old now, and you're a libertarian, but you were a lefty. Well, the younger, like people your age, are a lot better about like. People your age are still young. It might be different in a few years, but most of the people who come from the left and libertarian movement, as soon as COVID came around, you see a whole bunch of free staters and so-called libertarians. Their mental illness was expressed quite publicly, where they're like, "Oh, I'm going to take all the vaccines and wear the masks and follow all the science." And
that's fine, but when they started demanding that I wear the mask, that's where they messed up.
And
Dennis Goddard, for example, he might be listening. That dude's mentally ill, and he has been right along.
Yeah. Even like forgetting on any political stances, it's like there are people out there who just have no friends, just have nothing to root them to a place. They hear about the Free State Project and they think that they're going to come here and everybody's going to be their friend. And that's the answer to their problems, and then they don't actually do things, because that's the thing I really believe in doing. And it doesn't have to be like a specific type of like hands-on job. It can even be like you can do the job of getting words out to people, but you just have to do something. And that's why I like when people say exit and build, because if you just say, the answer to everything going on in the world is to find peace within myself and sit around amongst all these low IQ.
Not even low IQs. Like a lot of these mentally ill people are actually really high IQ.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but several of them are high IQ, mental illness. Like, they're going to just like, wake up and just start putting, rounds through their 45 into the ground because, something crazy happened, and there's like, and there's just these mentally ill people. This is, I'm going to really come out wrong, and I'm sure it can be taken way out of context when I'm about to say, but I'd, like to see this like Free State Project be a little more exclusive than so darn inclusive, because there's just like a lot of people, like, you know, Elizabeth Edwards, for example. She should have been like banned from a whole bunch of things having to do with the Free State Project a long time ago because she's a mentally ill, you know, essentially libtard.
I don't know.
And her father's a great guy.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a better mechanism for ostracization for people who deserve it.
There are lots of people that have been saying this kind of stuff, but then there's like this other group that are saying exactly what you guys are saying, but like it's like where do the categories get chosen? Because there are some people that are taking it to this level that I mean they wanted to kick out Colin of the Free State Project.
Yep.
Just people
Right.
that they just don't like for some reason.
But it's mostly all the mentally ill people who want to do that.
Yeah.
But what it comes down to is private property rights. The problem is the Free State Project is a collective, and then it's also an incorporation, and then it's also an idea.
Anyone who shows interest in being part of the Inc.
Right.
Mentally ill.
Well, I don't know about mentally ill, but people who also lust for power don't have to be mentally ill. You know, they just lust for power.
Red flag.
You know, sociopaths and whatever. And then there's a lot of people who participate in Free State Project Inc. and who just are, for example, they're really trying to do the best they can. They have great intentions and they do some good things. There's people in there right now that I think are really awesome and are trying to do some good things, and we'll see what happens. But what it comes down to is private property ownership. So, for example, on my property, I have a whole bunch of people who are not allowed on my property because I've deemed them mentally ill and I don't want them around, and I don't want their aggravation. So that's the real solution is, private property.
I wrote this tweet recently about how we need to stop saying like libertarians are autistic, and I think it's like a CIA planted propaganda. You know how they do things like, oh, start calling that a conspiracy theory, then we can call conspiracy theories bad.
Yeah, it's a sovereign citizen, I think, was a similar invention.
I think they started this thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to get into the libertarians like Facebook pages and be like, oh, we're so autistic, right? And now there's these people who just suck at life. They don't even have like actual autism. I know plenty of people that have actual autism and they try and they're good people and they're like obviously intelligent. And then there are people who are like, they don't even show signs of autism. They're just crappy people. And they're like, I'm so autistic, I'm a libertarian. And it's like, those people are not allowed in my house, like tons of them. And I wrote a whole tweet about that. Like people need to stop saying, oh, libertarians are autistic. It's so dumb. It's not even true. We have a caller on the line. Alu in, I think, Virginia. Alu, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going? Sorry for calling last minute again. I heard about a week ago the hosts talking about the Daniel Penny choking case, and I wanted to give my unsolicited opinion.
Yeah, I'm interested in your opinion because I am just not a person who's trained in anything like wrestling or MMA, but you are. And just to bring the the listeners up to speed, Daniel Penny, he subdued a man on a train in New York, or whatever you call it, a subway in New York, who was threatening people, and he had harmed people 50 times or more in his past. So he was like definitely like, you could believe his threats, and he was like touching people, etc. And this man named Daniel Penny, a 24-year-old, grabbed him and put him in some kind of a chokehold that you might know the name of, Alu, and basically he ended up dying. And there's like even a question among libertarians. He got found not guilty, but there's a question even among libertarians where they're like, well, should he have known this was going to kill this guy, and is it excessive force? So what's your opinion, Alu?
Yeah. I think it's a tough one. I wasn't there, but I saw some of the video. I think Jet called in the other day and said he clearly was trained because he got the rear mount and did the rear naked choke and applied it for 6 minutes, and he should have known. So he probably had some training. If he was a Marine, he took what's called VICMAP. It's the Marine Corps martial arts program or whatever. They all learned some jiu-jitsu. So he probably did know the choke. He didn't apply it perfectly, but also it's a tough situation. So he probably has some training. But to say that Jet insinuated that he knew once he stopped moving that he was unconscious and or dead and should have let go, that's not exactly the way I would say it. So full disclosure, I did grappling for like 7 years, and I've been training on and off for the last 10 years. So I have like 16 years training in jiu-jitsu and MMA, and I was in emergency medicine as a paramedic for like 12 years in EMS. So I'm familiar with the chokes from the medical standpoint. I've applied this choke. I've been choked many times. When you're holding someone in the rear mouth, that means you have control of their back and you have leg control. You can really control them. When you're choking them, they'll be resisting. When they stop resisting, will you know it? Probably, but with him, with the adrenaline, the chaos, he might not have even noticed that he had stopped resisting. So I don't give him 100% blame. In general, I would say he probably is not guilty of any homicide, including manslaughter. Is there a lesser charge? Maybe, assault, battery, whatever, reckless, something. Maybe, I don't know. But I think if I were on the jury, I didn't see all the evidence they saw, I don't think, but I'd probably lean toward not convicting of any homicide in that case. But it's a tough one. And it's hard to know what, I don't think he meant to kill him. I think he meant to subdue him. I think the great thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is there are chokes, but there are also other ways to control someone. So if I were there, again, ideally I wasn't there, but in an ideal circumstance, I could control him with a mount or a side mount or rear mount or other ways to control his limbs. So he couldn't hurt someone until, police got there without killing him, without choking him. So there could be other ways. So I don't know if necessarily I would have choked him. If I thought he were a real serious threat, I might have choked him.
Well, here's the thing.
But it's tough.
He obviously believed he was a real serious threat because he was was touching people and telling people he was going to kill them. So I mean, I would say that is quote unquote obvious.
And on the subway, for those who haven't been, I lived in New York City for 10 years. I took a lot of subways. It is scary, and it's kind of the scariest place to be, right? Because you're in a car, whatever, 100 feet underground. There's no cell phone reception. You're locked in a car until the next stop. It could be 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
No police are coming to get you. No one's coming to get you. You're all alone. So if someone attacks you, I've had friends attacked there and robbed. You're screwed. You're on your own. So
yeah, I kind of think that's just what you get for acting a dangerous fool on the subway.
Yeah, that's a thing. And then also, there are protections for people. Like, say you're with a friend, you're doing drugs, and then that friend ODs. Well, if you call the cops, you have protections under the law. It's kind of if you're trying to save people from someone else's danger and you accidentally kill him, I feel like there should be a little leeway,
yeah, there's good Samaritan type laws. I don't know.
I don't even mean according to the law, but
But I just don't know. I don't want to go further and say if somebody is a little bit threatening to you, I can start shooting them and start shooting people all over every day. So, but I agree that there's some good Samaritan, self-defense, and defense of others type of point to be made here. I just think it's a tough situation. I don't think it's super clear cut. I think he was defending himself and others. I think it might have been possible to not kill him. And again, maybe he did have other mental issues or drug issues or medical issues that led to him dying too. But it's hard to know. I mean, he choked him. He probably didn't try to kill him. I'm sure he feels terrible. He's been through crap for the last year, Penny. He's probably not going to do it again very often. What's that?
He was only 24, even though it's crazy. He looks like 45.
Yeah, he does look older. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I hope I made at least some points that educate some people. I don't know.
I mean, I think the guy's a hero. There could have been many, if he wasn't on that subway to stop this, violent dude. I mean, there's stories I've heard that, dudes are beating the crap out of girls. Nobody's doing anything about it in subway. Like the guy's raping a girl on a subway, and everybody's just looking the other way.
Because they don't want to become the next victim.
Well, there's all kinds of things, but there's just
they just don't care.
All the men have been chemically and mentally castrated now for decades.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that's heroic behavior when it's. I mean, that should be the standard, and anybody who doesn't do it is a coward.
Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Yeah, 100 years ago, that was more standard chivalry than it is now. Yeah,
that was true,
yeah, you act a fool like that back in the day, you get smacked around real quick.
And this is the thing where, and that stuff couldn't even happen really in New Hampshire because so many people carry carry guns.
New Hampshire, and also just there's a reason that guy made that song that's called Try That in a Small Town. It's cringe, and people tried to say it was a racist song, but in any small town in America, you start doing stuff like that, somebody was going to do something to you.
Right.
Maybe not like Connecticut.
An armed society is a polite society.
Yeah.
And but and also if you look at this guy's arrest record, he had 44 something convictions of violent crimes previously, so he's just been able to get away with all kinds of stuff.
The guy who died, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
he had like 40 or 50 arrests. And thank you for the call, Alu. Unfortunately, we have more calls, but we don't have time to take the calls. But yeah, that guy that died, I can't remember his name, even though I remember. Oh, Neely, Jordan Neely. So he's the guy that died, and
he doesn't really deserve name recognition as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't even think he'd be able to notice that it was happening. He was like one of those people who's like constantly on drugs. I saw a video of this one in Toronto on a train or whatever you call it, subway, and there was this man, his shirt started catching on fire. Who knows why? Maybe like a crack pipe, I don't know. And he's staring at it for a long time, just trying to figure it out. And he's saying, like, man. And then he finally gets the shirt off his back, and he throws it at the person's feet who's filming, and that person just really calmly kicks it off and like continues looking the other way, because you don't want to become the victim of somebody because you made eye contact with them on. And this is all solved by owning guns and living in New Hampshire. Thanks for listening. More Free Talk Live tomorrow.
An alarming new study finds that people suffering from stress-related disorders react poorly to being trapped in underwater elevators. A tired 398-month-old throws a tantrum, and a little clay thing is purchased at an arts festival. And now an eerily perfect recap of this week's news. The Catholic Church reversed its long-held stance against gay marriage this week after meeting Connecticut couple Tony and Craig. The vacationing pair dazzled the Pope and assorted clergy with their witty conversation and true loving affection for each other, leading Vatican officials to conclude that love is love and it's silly to put restrictions on it in this day and age. The Chinese people announced that they would be willing to forgive most of the